Hello, everybody. Welcome to Frame Trap. Today, I am joined by Kyle Bossman at the end.
Hello.
Michael Dami in the middle.
How's it going?
Good, man. It's going good. I'm going to be your host throughout this. I am Ben Moore, and my opening question to you two fine gentlemen is, will you ever stop trolling each other? Or is it kind of like eternal?
I think we're in a truce period right now, right?
We're in a truce period of trolling.
You're in a truce period?
Yep.
Was this formally decided?
It was very informal. It was just a nod. We walked into the office one day. Damiani nodded first. I knew what that nod meant, and I returned to the nod.
Yeah, it's the troll negotiation nod, basically. It's a very specific nod, and he laughs now, but we both acknowledge it. We both understand it immediately.
Yeah.
And when you see that nod, it's basically like truce.
Yeah.
Truce. We hey, I'm having a rough day. It's like, Kyle, rough day.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I get it. No trolling today.
I feel like some things are instinctual for people. Like they have something within them that cannot be tamped down for too long and eventually comes out. And I think it's easy when we have our week to week and we have a rhythm where you guys can have that truce and change things. But easy living is coming up.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to kind of live with each other for a couple of days. I do think the trolling wears on you both during that 2-day period.
It's all for show. We know that we have reputations, and at this point, we troll each other as a performance.
It's a performance.
Yeah, knowing deep inside that this is all part of a cooperative trolling.
Is that performance entertaining for you?
No, it's dreadful. It's a lot of work.
It's part of the job.
Yes.
It's part of the job.
Yep.
Okay. Well, this is going to be interesting, Frame Trap, because just for me, it's been light as far as games I've been playing. I've been playing a lot of Fire Emblem, but I can't really get too much into Fire Emblem just yet, and so it's an awkward period. But last night, I think at around 9 or 10 or something, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 came out, and I played some of that, and Kyle, you played some of that.
Yeah.
So let's open with it. Let's open with this brand new game. What do you think?
So this is funny. I have my friends from college. We played through X-Men 2. What was it called? X-Men Legends 2. Back in college. We had a great time. So for Ultimate Alliance 3, we're like, okay, 9 p.m., let's all get online. Let's co-op it. It's going to be super fun. One of the guys was like, dudes, I'm not going to make it home by 9 p.m., which, is going to happen.
Right.
So with my other friend, I'm like, hey, let's just see how online works.
Yeah.
The thing is, you have to play.
Are you gonna tell that other friend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have to play for an hour to even get to online. You and your friends can't hop online and watch the intro together. You each in your own little isolated switches have to progress to the point in which.
See, I did not know that because I was just playing single player. But how does that happen? How does that happen with your big game that's about superhero buddies getting together to beat up dudes? It's supposed to be simple fun.
Yeah.
How do you be now you gotta wait?
The idea is, I think, very Nintendo. It's we need you to see all the tutorial stuff before you hop online.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the tutorials where you can finally click online.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that they do that, because I can understand if you're going to be the matchmaking with random people. Hey, at least learn how to play the game before you jump online.
Right.
But if you're doing friends only mode, I'm assuming they have a way to just play with friends in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, who cares?
Right.
Just let them jump in from the start. That seems kind of backwards, honestly.
Yeah, I guess can't you structure the tutorial in a way where you're just going through it with your friends and you're all learning?
You could easily do that, yes.
Right? It's why do you need to learn in isolation? That doesn't make any sense to me. But that's something interesting about Ultimate Alliance 3 that in my time with it so far, it's both really, really simple, which is good. You want a nice, simple, classic beat 'em up in a lot of ways, but then it has the character progression is at least seemingly a little bit more involved than I was expecting, where it's okay, you get these XP cubes that you can expend to raise up levels, and you can level up skills individually, and then there's this whole tree where you can focus on different stats, and if you mix and match different heroes together, you'll get different stat boosts. I was oh wow, this is a lot more than I was expecting. for some reason. But yeah, how's the basic gameplay treating you?
So I'd use heroic camera, which I think is a mistake because I always like having a camera.
What is heroic camera? I have not messed with the camera settings.
So I think traditional is like top down, like the older, X-Men Legends or Ultimate Alliance games. But yeah, the heroic one is behind the character, and you can use the right analog stick to rotate around and like really explore the environments.
Yeah,
it doesn't work well like that. They did that as a compromise, and so like it's not made for that. You have to go into a menu and select it. You weren't even aware of it, Ben.
Right.
So like it's not like a thing that's advertised, but I'm still going with that because I like that. I like exploring an environment. I like the right analog stick. You're being these heroes. It's way more fun to be down there with them.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Speaking of exploring the environment, something that like it's funny because I like this game, but something that just immediately stuck out to me in a super bad way is very early on. There's like this laser, not puzzle, but kind of obstacle course that you have to get through, where it's like, okay, the lasers keep showing up, and you have to like jump through at the right time or just avoid them. But then there's one where you like need to move a box and like push it into the lasers, and there are these rooms on the side that you can go into, and you'll go into the room and like the camera. You can't even see your character. It's just like your character's completely covered. And I went in and out of this room like 3 or 4 times, and it was only like after a few times of trying it that like the camera just decided to like pan down and I could see. But the other times I couldn't, and I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I was doing something wrong.
That happens to me a lot in heroic camera mode, and I just thought like, oh, this is my fault for choosing this.
Oh, no. Yeah, I didn't mess with the camera at all.
Yeah,
and that happened.
That's really funny.
But yeah, the other thing that I think is interesting about Multiple Ultimate Alliance 3 is the voice acting, where like some characters it feels like are definitely just like trying to copy the MCU versions, and others
Rocket
Raccoon, Iron Man, as well, I would say, and then others aren't. And it's interesting because I actually think like Rocket Raccoon. I don't know who the voice actor is for that, but I actually think he's doing a pretty good job of that. I think Iron Man is doing a pretty good job. I think the voice acting across the board is pretty good. Nick Fury, they're trying to emulate Samuel L. Jackson, but yeah, it's just interesting to see those different approaches. Like I wonder what the direction was like there.
What's funny is like Gamora is very, very plain the way they directed that one. For some reason, I feel like it's only one hit. Like she gets hit and she does her excerpt, and she sounds like an old woman every time. It's like, and I hear that so much because I'm playing as Gamora for that first section. Just, it's like, why was that the take? And so she's just like, I've got you now. It's like, I don't know. There are some weird. Maybe low budge choices with voice acting for sure.
Kyle, that's something that only you would bring up, and like everybody kind of like has to be familiar with Gamora because you're only playing as the Guardians of the Galaxy in the very, very, very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And like I didn't notice that at all.
Oh, okay.
So whatever this like elderly cry is, yeah. I'm not sure what that is.
I like the style. I like the visual style.
I agree with that. Yeah.
This game is made for 12-year-olds, and they are not shy about it. You know what I mean? Like it's just they look like action figures. They have the detail of action figures.
Yeah.
But they're nice looking.
Yeah.
They do, to me, look better designed than Marvel's Avengers by Square Enix.
Yeah.
They just have an aesthetic that's well applied. And yeah, I it works, I guess, because they're tiny, right? Like because if you're using the normal camera, you're just going to be, you don't even need to see the details of them so well.
Yeah.
And their basic figures need to stand out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like a dumb game about just pounding bad guys with superheroes.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you on the characters that like looking like action figures. I think that's a pretty good thing to bring up. The environments are like not interesting at all so far. Like it is just very much like you're in like an industrial space area. Like it's just very like basic environmental design, as far as I can tell. But it almost doesn't matter because I think both the heroes and villains, the most important part, what you're there for, do look really, really good. I agree with that. What do you think about it mechanically? Because I've actually so far, just like maybe an hour or two in, and still in the beginning of the game, I actually kind of like what they're trying to do mechanically, where it feels like they're trying to implement some mechanics where it's like, hey, you have some enemies have this stagger meter, you need to get that down, and then you can stun them and do a lot of extra attacks. Or bosses, like you fight Venom and it's like, okay, he's gonna jump down, you want him to jump down at this specific point, so make sure that when he does this attack you're ready for it. There's just kind of enough of that where it's like, oh, I need to like learn how to dodge this or block this enough that it's like not completely mindless, but it's not so complicated that it's like, this isn't what I came here for.
Yeah, I think that what's weird is the 7.5 is the right version of this game. Mm-hmm. None of us are reviewing this, right?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I just said 7.5. That's not like the official Easy Allies review.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I think Huber was originally going to review, but then obviously, kind of crazy circumstances happened. So I don't know what's going on with the review.
Sure, but yeah. So like Ben, I think that it survives off of being simple. It's sort of like if it is like each of us are our own Dantes and we all have like our own crazy combos that we're all trying to pull off.
Right.
I think it wouldn't work as this 4-player game where everybody's just trying to level up and unlock new abilities.
Right.
And like mash through the story.
Right. But what's interesting about this game is like it's trying to have somewhat of an extended life, right? Like they have DLC plans down where they're going to be releasing content for this game over a period of time. Like it also has to be interesting enough to get you to want to check back in later down the line. Like, do you think it accomplishes that?
I've yet to play it with my friends.
Sure.
Like once we all get through that hour and we all get in, we all find a time that all three of us can schedule in. I think this game's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have to like chat over WhatsApp or anything but Nintendo online. But like we'll find out a way to like get this working. Yeah. And then I think it's going to be the there's another thing, Ben. There's one more thing for online. Okay. So you have a host and guests.
Yeah.
The host can change their character willy-nilly whenever they feel like it. The guests are locked in to that character for the entire play session. They pick a character, they log in with this character.
So different than local or single player. Wow.
Yeah. That's like they can't change.
No.
I feel like that's so against what the game is trying to promote in its own design, where like you have moments, like constant hype moments where it's like, oh, hey, these guys are here now. Now you're recruited into the cause. Like they kind of present them in a way where it's like, don't you want to try them out? You can get different bonuses for mixing and matching. Like what?
We're going to have to be like, okay, log out. It's like,
that's crazy.
I think it's going to be like that. We'll have to figure out how that flow goes. Weird. It's also not clear to me at this point if I bring my Spider-Man to my friend's game, if I'm playing as my Spider-Man or his Spider-Man, and I don't really know how that's going to work.
Yeah, I'm not really at a point where I can tell how much like levels are actually getting me. Yeah. How much it's really helping me when I'm going through the skill tree or improving abilities. Just because like a lot of fights, you're kind of approaching it the same way, where it's just like attack and spam your special and do your ultimate as much as you can. I do think in terms of like structures of fights, especially with boss fights, they kind of make it pretty satisfying where like when they have their stagger meter up, you don't really do that much damage to bosses. Mm-hmm. And then when you get the stagger meter down, that's when you kind of want to cash in on your big super moves where you like it splashes across the screen and you just go crazy and do a flurry of attacks, and you can like activate all of your heroes' super moves to do a ton of damage. And when you do that, you just melt their health. Mm-hmm. And I really like that, where you like every boss fight, I've kind of been conditioned to be like, okay, all right, I staggered them, now I can do more damage, and then doing all the super moves and seeing that huge chunk of health drop, like that's really satisfying.
It is. Actually, I like it than one big health meter. I think it's It's funny. It's almost like a superhero battle to have these stagger moments where it's not just a consistent chiseling away at a person, but to have these like big impactful ching. Really, it's a satisfying like their arms go up, they're stunned and they like flash white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels really nice to finally stagger them.
Yeah, and I don't know, just the way that the boss fights have play out. Like you fight the Green Goblin, and he's just throwing his pumpkin bombs all over the place, and it's just that had a slightly different flavor than the other fights that came before it. And so, like, I don't know, we'll see. I want to play more of it.
Me too.
Which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. And like, I was kind of bummed because I was like, man, like I'm just gonna be checking this out single player. I wonder if that's really gonna hurt my experience, or like I won't want to play it like this. Like maybe I'll be missing something. But I was having a good time.
And you'll be able to play as any character you want to.
Yeah, that was really nice because I did like several times. I switched out people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm curious about when you get a chance to play multiplayer, especially online.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because local multiplayer, like, definitely like had the benefit of being able to change like mid-level at the points. Like you can change a character, but sometimes I felt I'm curious because I got a lot of suggestions. Kyle saying that whenever I try the final version of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 was to try the heroic cam, the dynamic cam versus the traditional top-down. Because playing with other like multiplayer, it felt a little too chaotic at times and hard to keep track of anything.
well, the camera when you like get away from each other, the camera zooms out, right?
Yeah, and imagine when you're playing with like randoms, it's gonna be wow, this is yeah. And I was like playing a Spider-Man as well, so I'm like I'm swinging and like well I'm also now above everything and everything's going down below.
Yeah.
And then like talking about like triggering the stuff like I forget what the ultimate attack is, but once one person triggers it, it's like does everyone? It like gives you a prompt. Do you just want to do it? It's like you should just say yes, and it's just like no idea if like was not paying attention to the stagger meter, so like no one like people are just gonna trigger it. And it's just like do you want them to fully waste it or do you want to go all in? It's just like a little weird.
It's a lot of cooperation for sure.
All right. Tell me if I'm crazy here, but like very minor pet peeve. I wouldn't even say it bothers me that much, but just something that I've noticed is like when so many games I feel like go out of their way to name something different, even though it's like the same thing as it is in other games. So they'll call like a super attack just like something else, like Omega Blast Laser Alpha, and it's just like no, it's a super attack. Like the way that it functions is like a super attack in every other game. Just call it that because everybody does it anyway. Because you see that sometimes where people will be like, the super attack that they have, and everybody knows what that means. Like, should we standardize that a little bit, or is it like
supers are supers, specials are specials?
Yeah. Okay. All right. But Damiani, when you were playing it outside of that kind of like chaos and it being hard to follow, what did you think about how it felt to play?
I mean, yeah, it was very simplistic, very basic. It didn't feel overly complex, at least. Beating up lots of enemies on screen with like multiple other people. Yeah, it definitely was appealing in that immediacy and that immediate satisfaction and reward and seeing very flashy. It felt like you were playing as superheroes. It was delivering on that part of it. My concern with this game and its predecessors has always been the long marathon sessions. Like this is something I feel like if you play for too long, even with friends, it's the diminishing returns come faster. Where it's just you reach a point where I've been doing the same thing over and over again with this. It's not that. On top of like, I agree with the criticism that like the levels didn't seem very detailed. Yeah, very simple. I feel like it gets to a point where it gets a little boring, and you might want to take a break and step away from it. And how do you get people to want to like play that like longer? How do you get them to come back and do that? And do you just play in sessions and stuff like that? And I'm guessing that's like what people are probably going to ultimately do. But I feel like my experiences with the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, playing through that in its entirety with friends, it just was like such a slog by the end. Because we marathoned it, I was like, this is not the way to probably experience these games. Where you think of like great beat 'em ups, they aren't that long. Right. Like they focus on the moment to moment combat. They deliver that so well, and it doesn't need to like worry about length. Whereas these games, I think, go a little bit. They want to be a little bit longer. They are a little bit more. They're not too long, but they feel longer than like the average beat 'em up to me.
Yeah, Damiani, I'm always curious about how long everything is. Like, anytime I'm playing a game, I want to know, out of my own curiosity, and then just, like, scheduling stuff, how long something is going to be, and I did some quick looking online, so maybe this isn't accurate. I haven't finished Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I don't know. I think it's about 10 hours long based on what I was seeing.
Not too bad
online. Yeah, it's not, but it's like it's also one of those things where by maybe hour 9 you could see that. However, like, and I don't know, Kyle, if you got the same read on this, but the story seems extremely simple. Like,
yeah, that's what I meant by like for 12-year-olds.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, like you gotta stop Thanos and get the Infinity Stones. Like, it's just like the most basic story, and not in a bad way. I feel like the tone kind of supports that. Like, it seems like they're having some amount of fun with it, and trying to capture the personalities of these heroes as best they can. And like, I don't know, for me that was working because it was like a game that I had on, and then I was just like having YouTube videos on in the background, and it seemed like a very good, at least when you're playing by yourself, like a good veg game. Like, you could just kind of hang out, and you're getting like some progression, so you're seeing numbers go up, and you have that be somewhat satisfying, and you're just beating up people as cool superheroes. And then I imagine with your friends, like, you're just talking with each other and
yeah,
talking about whatever.
It does feel like a little softer than even other Ultimate Alliance games, though. It does seem more like Disney Channel, like Disney Channel XD. Like, this could be on like this dialogue could be on TV. You know what I mean? That when somebody's writing a Marvel comic or any comic book, I guess, like, normally they're not just trying to make superheroes look cool and beat bad guys up.
Sure.
And this is just that. It's missing that other element behind all those things.
Right.
You know, the things that like Stan Lee like to set out to do initially. But hey, it's a 7.5 type game. You know what I mean? It's a swimming in sevens game. And it's not trying to aspire to that. So it's hard to call that a criticism of like, hey, you're going a little simple on this. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me when you like take the Marvel lineage and you do very simple things like that.
See, it's all about like what's out there for me, because like I feel like with superhero games in a pre-Batman Arkham world, like they were usually very simple. I feel like
very true. Yeah.
Where like there was a lot of complaints of like, yeah, this is just like a movie cash-in. It's not really doing justice to this license. And I'm speaking in generalities here, but I feel like things changed post-Batman in a way that, like, those Batman games are really good, and we just had Spider-Man last year, which is not a shallow game, I would say, right? Like, it is trying to tell a deeper story. And so, like, I feel like I've kind of gotten that recently, and I just played Batman Arkham Knight, so that might be why. So, like, I'm super okay with this, like, sugary beat people up as cool heroes thing. Yeah. And maybe that's just a time and place thing. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, and it's exactly what I think certain people are looking for.
Yeah.
How long has it been since Ultimate Alliance 2?
Sure.
And now you're getting a 3. So I think this was made for a specific audience, and this is what they've been clamoring for. So not every superhero game needs to be like Batman, Arkham Asylum, or Arkham City level depths, or Spider-Man. You know, there's a place for this as well. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had this immediate feeling when I was playing it where I was like, oh man, like there aren't enough beat 'em ups out there. And I like, part of that is on me because I know in the independent space, like some of those needs are being filled and I'm not playing those games, but I couldn't help but get that sensation of like, man, like I miss this. And like I sometimes this is nice. And like, I feel like I'd be sad if this genre went away, kind of a feeling. So, yeah.
Just that light, heavy.
Light, heavy. Yeah. And just like, I don't know, I feel like they lean into it in pretty smart ways as well, because you'll get, like, when there are a lot of specials. Like, I was playing Gwen, and you have this meter, and you can just keep hitting the button until your meter is gone. And it's just, like, comical, because the special is you're just, like, whipping a bunch of web at an enemy, and you just keep mashing the button, and you're just like, I'm just going to keep doing it until it's gone. Like, I'm just going to sit here and watch like a bunch of numbers fly up, this meter slowly drain. It's like, this is fun. Like, this is stupid fun. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I was having a good time. Kyle, before the show, you brought something to Frame Trap that I was, I guess, not expecting wouldn't be correct because I knew you were playing. You mentioned you were playing this before, but like until you had mentioned it a little bit earlier, I didn't know you had interest in it. The Borderlands 2 DLC.
Yeah.
What is it? Commander Lilith
and the Fight for Sanctuary.
Yeah. So what prompted this?
So I think the existence of this DLC is really cool. This was free DLC, launched for a very old game. I think it launched in like 2011 or 12. That bridges the gap between 2 and 3. I expected it to be just, like a little half-hour thing. It's long. It's like 2 hours if you're just running through the whole thing, which I did. But like there's like 6 hours of things if you're like doing side quests and like you really love all these characters. And so it's been so weird to hop back into Borderlands. So, I mean, this DLC is expansive. Yeah. It's got new characters, new voice acting. They bring back old voice actors. They did new animations using these old models and things like that. It's just really, the effort into this DLC is so high. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
The idea that this is just like a free advertisement for Borderlands 3. I love that. Just like, hey, we're putting DLC into this old game, so you're more incentivized to pre-order 3. This made me certain I don't want to play Borderlands 3.
Really?
Yeah. This DLC unsold me because of the Borderlands design. Just its straight up game design, I think is dreadful. I think I actually really love the visuals. I really love this world. Anytime I'm in a new environment, I'm so excited. I just hate what's at the very, very core of this game, which is having your numbers slightly higher than the game wants you to have them. Just the spawning of enemies, the enemies who just spawn right beside you, and they just need to take a certain number of your resources, and then they'll give you some resources back. And just that's the balance of this game. Is you're shooting at a guy, and I know this is probably lots of games, but right. I don't like play a lot of loot games for these reasons. But I'm just shooting at a guy who I know I'm killing, but he has just more HP than the last guy I shot. So I'm just still shooting him, and I'm like wasting ammo. And I know that like the reward I get for shooting this guy is not worth the ammo I'm spending on him. So I just run through the level. And that is what it ended up being. It's just me running to the next objective. It's not worth it for me. I don't need your experience points because I get way more for completing an objective or killing a boss. I don't need this. I don't need any of this. And so they just made a game where it's unrewarding to play the game, to kill the enemies, which is why you want guns. You want more guns to kill enemies and have that feel fun. When I don't think that's the most fun thing in Borderlands, but it's just about the randomness. I got a lucky gun. That is what they want you to feel. Mm-hmm. The environmental artists want me to feel like, oh, this is so cool. But at the very, very core of the game's design, it's, I got a lucky gun. That is like the number one priority for Borderlands. And that is, if I had to define to everyone who is upset about why I dislike Borderlands so much, like the bad script's like number 3, and number 1 is like the reliance on the randomness and you liking the randomness.
Yeah, this is kind of difficult to unpack, Kyle. Yeah. Because I feel like that's what it's trying to be explicitly. Like that's what it wants to accomplish, and that is what is resonating with people, and that is a genre that since Borderlands 1 has exploded in popularity. Mm-hmm. Like everything that you're saying, I feel like you could say about The Division 2. I feel like you could say about Destiny.
Yes.
It like explicitly.
And those things truly bother me. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. But I guess why I enjoy Borderlands and why I enjoy those other games, and I have issues with them, but not really what you're describing, is like I'm kind of signing up for the progression. I'm kind of signing up for that treadmill. And that for Borderlands as well, I think kind of the craziness and like, the guns not always being like super traditional guns, like having quirks to them. Mm-hmm. And you changing weapons a lot and trying to get something better and trying to do something new on top of like your own character ability and kind of playing into that as well. Like you're not just relying on your guns. You have other things. I think kind of separate it a little bit and make it interesting. And I guess what's confusing for me is I know that you are primarily like a world and story guy, or at least that's the impression that I get. But you really like RPGs.
Yes.
And I would have to imagine that even though you prioritize like the story and the world in RPGs, that like on some level you have to like the progression just because it's such a big part of it. Like getting new equipment, getting new spells, all of that stuff. And so what is it, I guess, about this genre that bothers you?
I guess it's perhaps the raw randomness, the idea that this gun is just a roll of the dice. Mm-hmm. The idea that like, I don't know, just opening nonstop boxes, just anything with a little green rectangle on it, it's supposed to be satisfying to just like open it and just suck in the ammo. I guess to me, it's just like a cynical abuse of the human mind. It's just like we by nature love these things. When I first hopped back into Borderlands 2, I was having a really good time. Yeah. And what was really funny is I was carrying a friend up to level 30, and I was playing levels where I was not getting any loot that mattered to me at all because I was too far up. It's like, oh, this is all worthless, and all these enemies are super easy to kill. I was having a fine time. But then when I got to this point where I'm like playing the game the way that the game wants me to play it, where it's just like, oh, you're going to have to grind against a wall of bad guys, clear them out before you progress. I'm just like, why?
Sure.
None of these things have any tangibility. Do you know what I mean? None of these things feel like a guy who lived in that shack who just wandered out right now. It all feels like randomly spawning numbers. Mm-hmm. And so, despite the work put into the world and the environments, it all falls apart when a guy spawns right next to you and just like takes out half your health.
Yeah. I guess there's a couple of three different things that I want to bring up in response to that. The first is a strength of Borderlands. So I was playing Borderlands 3 at E3, mm-hmm. And like I had a gun that when you reloaded it, you threw it like a grenade. And I was like, oh man, like that's cool. And it makes me, because that's not just a stat increase. That's not just like you do 2% more damage. That is like something where it's like, oh, when I reload, I have to like I can't just hit that button. Like I should try to like aim and throw it right at this guy, and that was cool. Like that had a tangible effect on how I was playing the game. And I think Borderlands, that's just one small example, but I think Borderlands kind of relies on that quirkiness and giving you things that change how you play in a certain way. But I agree with you in the sense that like when you hit that wall and like you feel like you have to grind or that something takes forever to get through, like you're not doing anything interesting. Like numbers against numbers like that is not very interesting. Or you just feel like there are times I remember back like in the World of Warcraft days where like you would just queue up with random people and do a dungeon, and you would like somebody would leave the dungeon and like everything would just fall apart, and you might be like X amount of time in, and I remember when it would all just fall apart, I'd think to myself like I feel like I just wasted my life in like a pretty deep way where I was like, man, I wish I could get however much time I spent on this back. And
so one person would be the difference? You would lose a dungeon if one person leaves, basically?
Well, it's just it would like things would just slowly turn sour. I mean, you just queue up with random people and you try go and you try to do your thing, and then like a mistake would happen and somebody would get salty, and then like people would leave, and you would just see it crumble. And you're just like, I just have to redo all this. Like we got this far in and I just have to redo all this. And I think that's kind of what you're describing with this like wall of numbers where you just kind of feel your life slipping away. And it's not interesting. You don't feel like you're really, I don't know. You don't really feel like you're playing a game. You're just kind of waiting it out more so. And I get that. And I think it's on the design of the game to make those fights interesting, to have unique mechanics, to have weapons that can overcome those challenges, to have options. And you're saying that you felt like Borderlands 3 didn't, or Borderlands 2 DLC didn't really have that?
Yeah, and I think that 5 smart enemies would be way more fun than the 50 dummies that they send at you. And the reason the 50 dummies are hard is because they have more HP and they hit harder, not because they do anything interesting.
Yeah.
And because it's Borderlands, they're all screaming stupid stuff too.
Yeah.
Like it just really tries so hard to keep it jovial, but then like there's this I knew just like halfway through this, it's like, oh, they haven't learned. They haven't learned a thing. They're just going to keep doing this because, they wrote the script recently. Like, this does not give me confidence that Borderlands 3 is going to have a smarter script than Borderlands 2.
Going back to Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Yeah.
Again, it's just about, like, encounter design for me where, like, sometimes when you fight a big boss that takes a while to kind of whittle away from, it's nice to have those rush of those 50 dudes that you're just kind of blowing through. And so, like, when you describe that to me, I'm like, I can see a way that would make sense and would be okay in the flow of the game.
Yeah, it falls apart when you're not blowing through them. When you come to this part of the game and it's like 5 minutes long of you just shooting these guys who just pop out of this spot.
Sure.
That's why it was like way more fun when I was over leveled. And when I was just hopping in, just pop, 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 pop. My sniper rifle kills a guy in one hit. That feels right. That's fun.
Right.
And then it's just, when you're just like, it's like, nope, I'm a badass. Take more hits. It's like, gah! And I just was like mad at it. I was just mad at this game.
But you were saying you got to a point where, like, once you got mad, you would just be running through, right?
Yes, and that's when I started just running. Yeah.
Right, and so that would make the problem even worse because you're not getting, like, the weapons and experience and resources that you need to, like, have those fights be easier.
Yeah, but I was finding that, I mean, I was already, so that it was like, you need to be level 31, I was 37. I was finding that there's no difference. I mean, the boss fights are, you just, like, you die and you shoot until you win.
Yeah.
It's just, you revive your partners. You're good on, you stay good at reviving each other. But, like, the experience that I would have gotten from those guys would have been marginal. It would have been like 10% of my bar, right? So it's just, it wouldn't have mattered. There's no reason to really grind for these guys.
Do you think that if you were playing with other people and maybe coordinating attacks, it would have been more interesting?
I mean, I was playing with another person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, it was more interesting because of that.
Sure.
There's almost no way I would have played through the whole thing single player.
Yeah.
I think that it's also like a fun hangout game. Once you do clear out all those people, you're just two people hanging out in an environment.
Yeah.
I think that is the appeal of Destiny as well. It's just like, oh, now we're here. Now we're our cool things with our cool gear. Like, how are you doing? What do you need? Stuff like that. Like, that's fun. It's just fun to hang out in a game environment with other people.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Borderlands 3. I played through Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 1, and I really liked them, but those games feel so long ago to me that, like, and I liked what I played of Borderlands 3 at E3. I'm interested to see how I feel now after the Destinies, after the Divisions, after all of this stuff. If it's still just as good, I think I will like it. But just thinking about Destiny and kind of talking about this flow, I think the thing that, like, carried Destiny for me was, like, how good the shooting felt, and as a result of that, just, like, I feel like you could get in encounters with Destiny where you'd have swarms of enemies and it would just be like, pop, you're dead, pop, you're dead, pop, you're dead. And you felt great because it wasn't always that grind. I mean, obviously you had that with bosses and certain types of enemies and stuff, but there was enough of that, like, quick flow, like, I'm moving through this place, I'm clearing out these guys, and it just felt like, I don't know, there was constantly moving, and I think that's always a really, really good feeling.
I do think that's an advantage to Destiny. Yeah, I don't know how, like, Division players do it. You can't even jump.
Yeah. I mean, that was a complaint in the Division 1 is, like, very bullet spongy enemies, and that exists in the Division 2, but they took steps to try to make that better, and I liked the Division 2 a lot. I really had a good time with it.
I do think Division 2 has more tangibility. I do think you kind of feel like you're there and you're shooting other humans. Like, they work a ton on their environments, and just, like, the environment is our game.
Yeah.
This post-apocalyptic world is the entire point of this game, and I think they do a good job with that.
Well, I think something, too, that can kind of offset maybe what you're talking about is, like, the Division 2 has plenty of moments, or had plenty of moments for me, where it was like, if I am an idiot, I'm going to die. Like, there'd be moments of difficulty where, like, hey, if you're not in cover, you're going to get wasted. If you're, like, not coordinating with your teammates, you're going to get wasted. And just doing difficult missions with, like, Huber or with, like, people that I didn't know, if somebody wasn't pulling their weight, we would get stuck, and I really liked that. And so I think you can offset that by being hard, but you can't be a grind all the time. And it sounds like what you're saying with Borderlands is like, it's not really difficult. You're not really struggling. You're not really having to like push yourself. It's just a wall. You're just like kind of wading through it. Huh.
Just pressing R2 until I'm out of ammo and then dying. You know? So it's like, all right.
I would love... I know you're like, hey, I don't like this game, and I don't want to force you to, but I would love for you to play Borderlands 3.
It's so weird, Ben. A week ago, I was so on board.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm about to pre-order. I was like, and it just wore me out, man.
Yeah.
But the week ago, I should say that I played the Dungeons and Dragons DLC. I forget what that one is. The Tiny Tina hosted Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Yeah.
That was super fun and interesting.
Nice.
They tried a lot of really cool ideas, like just changing things on the fly as she narrates and stuff like that. More interesting environments and enemies. And by the end, I was just running through those rooms too, because like, here's 1,000 skeletons, and like I can run by them. And so it eventually, that one fell off at the end too. But yeah, when they have interesting level design and mission design, it's fun. It can be, but yeah, it's at its core. It's not a thing I want to touch.
Okay, interesting. Kyle, that is not how I expected this conversation to go. Because when I knew that you were playing Borderlands, I don't remember how long ago it was, like fairly recently. I was like, oh wow, he's doing that, like giving it a chance. Like I expect you to be like, hey, I'm on board with this now. Yeah. And so it's kind of just like funny to be like, no, I'm no interest. No,
if we recorded, and that's what weird. If we recorded this podcast a week ago, that's the conversation we would have had.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty fun.
Right.
The dialogue's awful, but it's pretty cool to just hop around in there.
Kyle, a side effect, I don't think it'll necessarily happen because of this conversation.
Yeah.
But what happens with you and then with other allies as well is like an ally will have like a strong negative opinion about a game, and then people will be like, all the allies hate this.
Oh yeah.
It's like, no, like I wouldn't say I'm a Borderlands super fan, but like I want to play that game. I'm eager to play that game. I know Bloodworth is eager to play that game. It's like, no, not all the allies hate Borderlands. Or like what other games is this that like, I don't know, I just feel like that happens sometimes where all the allies are like put into that category. It's like, no, that's not necessarily true.
The thing is, though, like sometimes it's like, hey, when you dislike something a little, you hate it officially, right?
Right.
But like, I do hate this game.
Yeah, you hate it.
I hate it. And so that can stand on record that Kyle Bossman hates Borderlands.
Did you do the like hate? Were you playing it on PS4?
Yeah.
Did you do like the hate delete from your hard drive?
Not yet. I haven't done that to it yet. I will do that though.
Okay.
It does need to go. It's taking up space.
Delete?
Yeah, the hate delete.
Sure. Damiani, you have been playing and you reviewed Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, which I've heard or seen online, I guess I should say, from multiple people. One of the best Final Fantasy games ever made. Like people are really swinging for the fences on their love of Shadowbringers. Do you agree with this assessment?
Yeah, I think. Now here's a caveat, and we talked a little bit about this on the Easy Allies podcast about reviews, because this topic actually came up about people praising Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers and it being heralded as one of the best Final Fantasy games made, and it was interesting because I want to point out the caveat of that. When we're talking about Shadowbringers, we're talking about the Shadowbringers experience, the expansion content. Yeah. About getting to level 70 and progressing from there. It's not to say anything about the previous content and getting up to that point, because one of the I'm going to talk a little bit of a negative about Final Fantasy XIV. Since it's getting a lot of positive, there's still one pretty big negative about this whole thing, is that unless you want to spend a lot of money, you have to go through everything that preceded Shadowbringers.
Which is what?
Which is starting from level 1 and going through A Realm Reborn.
Okay.
All the patches in A Realm Reborn. Then going through Heaven's Ward. All the patches in Heaven's Ward. And then going through Stormblood and all the patches in Stormblood. And that is a lot. Your mileage may vary. You might have a fantastic time with that. You might be like, why the hell does I have to go through all this crap to get to the new stuff that everyone's like praising and having a great time? I just want to experience that content with people. And there are a lot of I've seen a decent amount of comments going, why don't reviewers talk about the whole experience? You're like, why aren't you talking? Like, they're like, I'm new to this game. Why are you neglecting to telling me about? You're saying this expansion is great, but I didn't know I was getting into this with all this other stuff, and now I don't know how I feel about this.
That complaint does not make sense. It's not like no one's talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
You want to see reviews for A Realm Reborn or Heavensward or Stormblood. That's all out there. There's countless things like that out there. It's not like this. People are keeping this information secret.
No, they're not keeping it secret. I think it's the fact that there's an assumption that once you play you jump into the game, you can just jump to the new content. That they don't understand that you have to either invest a significant amount of time to catch up.
How much money?
Or you have to play. So this is the biggest negative I want to point out: the ridiculousness of the price the cost to catch up if you just want to skip everything. You have to first buy an individual item for $25. I'll let you skip to the beginning of Shadowbringers' story.
Right.
But that alone isn't enough. You need to actually have a job that is the right level to be able to do that content. And so on top of that, you have to buy a job boost to boost a single job to level 70 as well. So combine those together, and that's $50. $25 for the story skip.
Don't you think those things should be bundled together? The fact that you would need to make two separate purchases to accomplish those two, when the point is the same.
They do have a thing that will say, hey, if you could buy these together. They're not discounted though, but they're just like, hey, what are you looking to do?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Oh, you're looking for this? You should probably buy these two together.
Right.
But when you're paying, I've seen a lot of people in the community point this out, that when you're paying more for that than you're paying for the expansion, there's kind of a problem.
Wait, so how much is the expansion?
Expansion's for $40 basically.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you're new to the game, you have to buy the original game. It's basically a bundle. You could buy it all for like I think $50 or $60 or $40 just for the new expansion. It's always been like $39.99 for the new expansions. Or you got to spend $50 on top of that to skip ahead and catch up to everything if you're a new player as well.
No monthly subscription though, right?
And there's a monthly subscription on top of that. But if you're a new player, you get 1 month free.
Okay.
So yeah,
how much is the monthly subscription?
At this point, it starts at I believe $12.99 a month.
That is so much.
I feel like I'm paying $14.99.
So if you're paying more, there's an option. There's two subscription tiers.
Okay.
There's the basic plan, which is just the only difference is how many characters can you make and how many characters per world can you make. And there's also a legacy price as well if you subscribed back in 1.0, whatever one actually that had subscriptions for it. But yeah, the point is Damiani, it does have a subscription.
Damiani, I feel like you're selling me insurance. That's how I feel.
So here's the thing. I had to make a Patreon post explaining all this to new players.
I think that's a good idea, by the way, yeah.
And I'm not the only one who's doing this. A lot of other people have had to go out there and be like, okay, this is pretty intimidating. Yeah. Like, you're hearing all these great things about this game, and it's like, oh, it's going to be so easy. I just jump right in, and it's just like, oh, wait, this is a pretty involved process here. Mm-hmm. I wish I had some more guidance and had some more resources. And there are really great resources out there. You just got to know where to find them. So having people now direct new players, prospective players, WoW refugees as they're being called now, the people coming over from that, where they need to go to find this information, and make an informed decision about what's the best course of action for them. Do you feel confident enough that you're familiar with MMO games and MMO gameplay that you could probably job boost and you're not going to need to learn from the scratch? The
term WoW refugee confuses me a little bit because I can understand people unfamiliar with the genre feeling especially intimidated and confused. And I think there are some finer details that may be confusing even if you are familiar with other MMOs. But if you're like, if you've been a diehard WoW fan, a lot of what you're describing is not that different from the way World of Warcraft functions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. With new WoW expansions, it's easier to just jump into the new stuff, isn't it? Typically, they don't force you to go through the whole story. Like, there's options.
You can character boost as well. You don't have to
And starting with which expansion they offered free with your purchase, you got a free boost as well.
Right. I don't remember which expansion.
It wasn't too. It was only a few expansions ago. They haven't been doing it forever. In their defense, and this is the third expansion for 14. So I think by like the next one or one after is when they would be the equivalent of WoW.
I guess what I'm saying is, on a very basic level, the concept of character boosts or expansions with a continuing story, like those are not new concepts.
Oh yeah, that part I don't think is confusing to that. I mean, there's other elements of 14 that they gotta get acclimated to first, but this is more for the new perspective player.
Gotcha.
And it's a little, as I said, a little intimidating to get over that hurdle. But I mean, once you another part of it is what they don't. How they go back to older content, and do they tweak it at all? Mm-hmm. Do they adjust it so that's more streamlined, so it's a little bit faster to get through, to catch up? Because A Realm Reborn is a little drawn out. It's probably the weakest. It's a little drawn out, has a lot of filler main story quests that could easily be axed. And, it's something that they've said that the developers have said they would like to go back and reevaluate when they get time. But it's the balance of how much time do we put into fixing old content that the further along we go in time is more obsolete and irrelevant versus putting all of our efforts into the new content, which clearly in this expansion and in previous expansions has paid off very well for them. And it has worked out very well for them. And it's an interesting balancing act, but I just want to point that out to anyone, because a lot of people are hearing how great this is and they want to jump in, that, look at some resources first. Like it's a very involved game.
Right.
You're gonna need to put some time into the preparation for getting into the game as well.
Yeah, and Damiani, despite maybe my questions or confusions, I think that's a very good thing to point out. And it's just a consequence of, like, A Realm Reborn is what, 6-7 years old at this point?
Yeah, it came out fall of 2013, so it's almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years old.
Like a few months away. Yeah.
Any game that is any MMO, especially that starts to get that kind of life, you do have to expect some complexity, but at the same time, I like what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that mindset of trying to bring people into the fold and trying to break it down as easily understandable as possible. But I don't think maybe you would be going to this much effort if Shadowbringers wasn't worth it. Like, I think that's the ultimate point of this. Is like, no, like, you want to experience it because it's so damn good.
That's a very good point, and that is the primary reason that others are doing this, is because we don't want you to be turned off by that, because it's such an amazing experience in lives. And honestly, I'd even argue that despite some of the flaws in the older stuff, a lot of the older stuff is worth going through too.
Yeah.
In fact, I would really highly recommend to anyone who's new to not skip over stuff. Like, you're gonna lose out on so much, and like, there's no rush. You don't need to rush. There's gonna be so much stuff awaits you that you're gonna be spending a ton of time on that. You don't need to rush it. There's like no immediacy to a lot of this stuff. Like, it's not gonna, with a few exceptions of a few things, limited events, nothing's going away. Like, the core stuff is always gonna be there. But yes, Shadowbringers, catching up to Shadowbringers, it is the best expansion they've released of the three so far. And I think it's the 14 is it's basically at its pinnacle right now. I think it has never been better than what it is right now in terms of just going through the main story quests, the way that they have streamlined how you play the multiple different jobs that are in the game, the tools and quality of life that they've improved. They've had 6 years to improve all these different things that the community has been asking for. I feel like while it's not quite Fortnite, where every week you're getting like brand new stuff and like and patch updates for that, you're getting major content updates at least every 3 months, with quality of life and balance updates in between those as well. And by like major, like, I used to hear WoW fans or WoW veterans compare what a patch update, not expansion, what a patch update in 14 was almost comparable to sometimes what an expansion would bring at points. Like, patches in WoW were nowhere near what patches in 14 were. I think only recently have they caught on over at Blizzard that, we can make something a little bit more out of their patches. And like I'm seeing them like making trailers for their patches, like go all out for that. It's a little bit more expensive. They add like new fights, new dungeons. They added a new job in a patch, not an expansion. Only the patch before, or 2 patches before Shadowbringers came out. They had Blue Mage as a job in the middle of an expansion for you.
It's, in my experience with WoW, eventually what it kind of felt like was frustrating the community is you have this game that's continually expanding and getting more layers and adding more things. And not just with MMOs, I think you can see it in other games as well, where like you had different people interested in different things. Like you had people that only cared about PvP. You had people that only cared about the story. You had people that just desperately wanted new classes. And so you like had all these things where like different people had different priorities for them. And if all those things like weren't being pushed forward in an equally strong manner, you would inevitably have people be disappointed. And just from an outside perspective with Shadowbringers, the kind of sense that I'm getting is like there's this pretty expansive, like, they've just made this game better across the board. Is that an accurate assessment of Shadowbringers? And, like, it just seems like everybody's happy with it.
I would say that's pretty fair. There's still that struggle, though, of, like, people asking for stuff that, like, PvP. It's not as big in 14 as it is in World of Warcraft. Like, there's no getting around that. And, like, while there's a major overhaul to the entire battle system, which by proxy affected PvP as well. Yeah. The focus on PvP has been pushed till the next major patch, which is this expansion is called 5.0, which is Shadowbringers. Patch 5.1 will have a proper title. It'll come out in a few months.
Do you feel like
there'll be new PvP maps and stuff like that? So they focus more on the story and job changes in this one.
Where do you feel like the community's head is at regarding PvP? Because it always seemed like to me, it just seemed like something that was there, and it's like not why you played that game. Like it just didn't seem like a driving force for people to play Final Fantasy XIV.
I'm extremely biased on this answer. It's gonna upset some of the more hardcore PvP 14 players out there.
Yeah.
PvP is most definitely not a major focus of Final Fantasy XIV, despite it having multiple PvP modes. The developers do try. They try to make it relevant. They have the most competitive serious mode is called the Feast. They have seasons for it. They have like rewards for it. They try and make it almost like they've tried to make it almost like an esports thing. It has not become that. It has not caught on that way. In fact, the community mostly carries the legs for that. And it is honestly, to put it bluntly, is a very small but very dedicated community. And they often get the short end of the stick. Like a lot of the game's changes ultimately trickle down to kind of ultimately changing PvP sometimes for the worse. Like the more the game gets simplified, it's better for like playing 15, 16 different jobs in PvE, but the complexity of PvP has always been watered down over time, and you see complaints about that. There are other more large-scale PvP modes that I enjoy. They're in their category called Frontlines. Just like large, like up to 72 people fighting each other in a big map, 3 teams of 24. They have one where you can spawn mechs. Like you can turn like Gundam looking things and go across like maps. Like it's almost like MOBA-esque with lanes. They've done stuff like that. They've tried. They've tried to make it, and at times it's been fun. And there are interesting mechanics there. It's just they don't get nearly the amount of love and attention as everything else in that game.
Right.
And it is just something that they put there they understand there's a small community for it, and they support it. But I don't feel like it's a huge focus for them. And honestly, I kind of personally would wish they would just axe the competitive nature, like the Feast. Like I wish they would kill that and just focus on the more casual, large-scale stuff, because when they make that a relevant thing, it's definitely more active. People tend to have a better time with it. Like highly competitive PvP is very frustrating and stressful, and I know some people love it because it pushes your limits, but this is not a PvP game. There's no world PvP. It doesn't revolve around it. Like it's not like the old school PvP systems.
Right.
In fact, the way this game works isn't really the best it's not the most conducive to PvP play, and it has its problems with that. still enjoyable at points, but I wish they would just go a little bit more casual with it.
Kyle, I want to rope you into this conversation because, like we kind of said at the beginning, people are calling this one of the best Final Fantasy games. They're really saying the story is fantastic. Like it's worth playing just for that. As somebody who is very attached to Final Fantasy, and I think Final Fantasy stories, like, does that move the meter at all for you?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's to me, it's at this point just a thing that I have to appreciate from afar.
How does one appreciate it like that?
Just you're
just happy that it exists.
You give it the nod. You're like, yeah, I'm glad it exists. When it does well, it makes me very happy. It's cool to see this MMO. Realm Reborn, I think, is one of the, like, just video game history-wise, one of the coolest comebacks on a single game. Like, within just updating the game itself is really cool. But it's cool to see it continue to do well after that. I played, what did I play? I guess the beta on PS4. I played a little bit. It's, to me, it's still not driven enough like a Final Fantasy game is. It's going to rely on you caring about, like, a lot more than I'm willing to care about in terms of my character and progression and, going to a town and picking up things.
So you're saying, like, there's just too many MMO things that you'd, like, have to instruct yourself on, like, just to engage with the game?
Yeah. And this is really weird. I just hate how I feel like a tiny person in the environments. Like, I feel like the environments are just always extra wide.
Okay.
Like the towns. You go to a town, it's just, you go to Golden Saucer, it's just, why is everything so wide here? I feel like I'm like a 2-foot tall little toy.
Well, like,
it's all designed for lots of people. It's all designed for, like, not just like I don't know, city streets can be narrow sometimes, but it's just like, no, everything just seems huge. I feel like a doll.
Do you think it... I'm asking, this isn't a troll.
Yeah.
Do you think it would help if you just zoom that camera in? You zoom that camera in a little bit.
It wouldn't, no, because the proportions are still weird. It's still weird.
Okay.
But no, to me, there's like this weird, I guess, silence in between things. Like, I watched Damiani stream, you know what I mean? And, like, it's not all fully voiced dialogue. And so it's just a lot of, like, just weep, weep. And I don't know, every character to me has the same expression, Damiani. Like, when all the NPCs that you talk to are like the same thing.
So, in that regard, so I had, like, yeah, what Kyle's talking about, there is something to be said about the game engine. This is an engine, it's not just a Realm Reborn. It dates back to OG 1.0. Like, this is almost like a 10-year-old engine. It's been reworked. They did rework the game, but a lot of the core code and, like, the models and stuff, like, they're restricted by, this is basically, I think they may have gone on record, but, like, if they haven't, this is basically a PS3 era game. It's not going to get pushed much further than that, looking like a middle of the life cycle PS3 game. And it was pretty good for what it was in terms of, like, character animations, but there's still a lot of like, sometimes they could look like robots. There's a little bit of stiffness. Sometimes it looks good, but it's gonna, I think once we get to the new consoles come out and once 6.0 comes out, probably like in 2 years, the next expansion, I would wager a lot of money that a lot of the reviews and criticisms are going to be, this engine doesn't hold up as well anymore. It might be time for them to make an update and stuff. And, like, that's a big deal. And it's not so simple for them to do.
You don't think the next online game is soon?
No, because they're still I feel like 14 is still doing well enough.
It's doing
11
extremely
and 11
well,
is doing. They still support 11 for crying out loud, despite them doing that. But I could see them in the next few years trying to come up with a strategy, whether it is a massive overhaul of 14, where, hey, we're redoing the game engine and stuff. It's going to be like a big, like, we're cutting off PS4 support. Like, you got to have, like, a higher, like, you got to be on PS5 or a better PC. Like, they already ended 32-bit support on PC because they're trying to increase the memory limitations, which has nothing to do with really the improving character models or anything like that. It's more about, like, like inventory stuff, like inventory limits, but it's like stuff like that, which is quality of life. But there might come a point where they're like, okay, this has been a great game, but it might be easier to start over from scratch and make another Final Fantasy online, and let's make let's take the best things we learned from 14 and other games out there, and let's build upon that, because I do think there are certain aspects probably that they are restricted by this engine. There's only so much they can do. They're doing the best with what they can. And there is a part of me that's could probably get to a point where, like, I wonder what they could do if they could just build. Naoki Yoshida and his team could have built this from the ground up, because he inherited this game and had to turn it around and rework what they could, but it wasn't built from scratch.
Yeah.
So that's one issue that's always going to plague them.
I really think, though, that working around those limitations is fascinating to me, and like I love to see how people are trying to solve these extremely difficult problems. And like a point of comparison, I think, is like telling a compelling and convincing story in a fighting game is super hard.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, what we have to put a lot of our resources into is making a good fighting game.
Yes.
And that has severe limitations. And so trying to tell a story around that, that feels natural, but also you have to like fight somebody. You have to win 2 rounds to move on, or whatever it ends up being, is going to be a little bit unnatural. I think the same is for MMOs, right? Where it's like we have to accommodate all these people, but we still have to make you feel important, and all of this stuff. I like seeing how they try to approach that and try to take small steps in getting it better. Kyle, do you think that maybe what's holding you back is kind of the expectation of Final Fantasy? You know, what that is, it that name that I think is maybe having these things stand out so much?
I think unfortunately not. There's just little appeal of any MMO to me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's not just this one. It is, to me, just a genre that requires a lot from you. You have to give it a lot of yourself.
Yes, Kyle, totally, man. Like, there have been a couple of nights where I've booted up Final Fantasy XIV because it's like, okay, I got to get through Stormblood before I can get to Shadowbringers. And it just is. It's just a lot. It's like, okay, wait, how does my class function? All right, where do I need to go? Like, just like, trying to get to 70, like, man, that experience bar is filling up really just so. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time. But just that, it does. It feels like a lot where it's like, I'm not going to get through this for a long time. And that's just the way that it is. But Damiani, going back to Shadowbringers specifically, you've talked about quality of life improvements. You've hinted at the story. But before we move on, I do kind of want to drill down into the specifics a little bit of, like, what specifically are the things in Shadowbringers that make it so good? Like, is it the new jobs? Is it, like, what elements of the story are they working with? What specifically are these quality of life changes? For sure.
Yeah, I feel like I apologize. It sounds like I've been a little negative so far in here. I mean, my review was so positive. I now that it's been more time and stuff and seeing some of the things, it's like always nice to like kind of keep it balanced and point out the stuff. But that still doesn't change the fact that Shadowbringers is phenomenal. And starting with like there's a lot of very specific things and that this does so well. It's stuff just as basic as like the zones, the environments, how they look, and their overall design. Stormblood, they took you to the Far East and a continent called Otherd, and then you were in this desert area of this kind of conquered area of Alamigo, which is very deserty. And my problem was those desert areas all looked very much the same, looked very bland and boring, and didn't feel... When I play a Final Fantasy game, I like to see them go really crazy with the environments. I expect things that are fantasy, that scream fantasy, whether it's high fantasy or just like something out of like a fairy tale, for crying out loud. And I didn't get that from Stormblood. Heaven's Ward had its moments as well, but it also felt like it was going for like this like northern like ice snow theme, and it's it's got dragons, it's kind of cool, but nothing ever felt as unique as the Realm Reborn zones, despite their being more small, their uniqueness. And Shadowbringers, the zones made me go yes. Like Lakeland is this like giant, like it looks like it's not cherry blossom teas, but this is like this hue of purple that just permeates throughout because of like the grass and the trees. And they have this effect going on because there's something called the flood of light that's kind of like threatening the world. Like light is your enemy. Like darkness is what you need to embrace to fight against light. It's like this the reversal of the classic tropes that you're used to in Final Fantasy. Is like great to see that as well. But just seeing this like this environment that like this doesn't look like it would be anywhere in reality, and it's great. And then like the fairy kingdom of Ilmeg is just, I was like, holy crap! Like the use of color in that zone, and then its dungeon as well for that zone is just. I was like, yes, like please more of this. Like I want to see more of this, and even the more simple, like I'd call the more simple looking zones, just the attention to detail. Like they do have a desert looking zone. I'm like, here we go again. And the first half of it is like the opening of it is like, it's kind of cool because like the land's been kind of like tilted because like it's like on the cusp of where the flood was stopped. Like this physical like manifestation of like light destroying the land, and it's kind of like cracked and broken up the land, and it's like all disjointed and stuff. Yeah. That's kind of cool to look at. But then you get to the other side later, and it's basically it is the Old West. They got mine carts, like rails for them to go down, like a trolley system. They got like these caves that you go like mining caves, and these like Old West town. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of nice. I've never seen something like this in this game yet. This is nice to see something new like this. And they just They kept outdoing themselves in that. They found the best way, I think, to introduce those zones. And I can't spoil the last zone, but holy shit. I was like, they pulled this off. I was like, wait, we're seeing something like this. I was just like,
it's a secret?
Yo, it's a massive spoiler.
Don't make him say.
Yeah, I'm not telling.
So I'm saying, like, when you're playing through it the first time, you did not know what you were about to go see.
No, did not know what we're going to see.
That's
and what's
cool.
even better is the beginning of the zone. They don't reveal like the best part of it, and that best part is like the oh shit moment. Like the zone itself conceptually is pretty cool, and then you get to the part where like, what's this huge part? There's this whole southern part I can't get to yet, and I can't even see what the hell? Like, and like I thought it was just a cutscene. Like, oh, it's just gonna be a cutscene. We're not actually gonna go to this. Like, no, we're going to. Like, you got to, yeah.
Man,
yes.
You focusing on the environments is really great because that's good environments. In MMOs, like that can be one of the best aspects by far because you just, due to the structure of that game, you spend so much time there. And so when they go out of their way to make it fascinating, it just makes that time that you're investing in so much more rewarding.
It feels really good just to like walk, because you're restricted to being on ground mounts or walking at first. You can't just fly around the zones till later. And like I like how
you still gotta like find the points. Okay.
That's still there, but they've learned their lesson. They put them more along the critical path of the story so that they're more obvious to see. You unlock flying a little bit earlier in each zone so that it's not like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to do everything. But like the way you progress through zones, how the quests string you along. I like the sights that you see. The landmarks that they put along the way are very like they continually impress. But like it's not just the visuals, the soundtrack. I think as good as the story and some of like the zones are, the soundtrack is the single best thing about this.
Nice. It's not like Realm Reborn has had weak music before.
No, and I know you've heard
like
some of this.
That 14 music's very good. Yes.
There is a dungeon. There's this Jungle Ruins dungeon, and when it kicks off, it starts playing this melody, and I'm like, this sounds pretty cool. And then when it when it just drops it, I was like, this is David Wise. This is Donkey Kong Country right here. Like I was like, in fact, I've not played it for Kyle yet. I was like, Kyle, I wanted to play. I told you about it now.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to play it for you and be like, Kyle, have you ever heard this song from Donkey Kong Country Returns? And you'd be like, yeah, it sounds familiar. What is this?
Watch it is like just like a shadow David Wise, like he just came in and
teamed up with Soken, but like that's not even the best song. I just want to illustrate the diversity that the soundtrack has. Like the main theme I think people have heard by now is this like kind of like cool like a guitar rock theme that plays.
Yeah.
And like it's been the theme for like the trailers, and when it kicks in, they only use it in one spot in this game, or I think one spot in this game, and it's like when they use it the perfect spot for when they kicks in. But like they have this like the Fairy Kingdom music. It sounds like Enya. It sounds like a literal Enya song. I was like, wait, did they actually get Enya to come do the vocals for this? Because it's fantastic. And then the Amarang, the one of the desert zone I was telling you about, that's the Old West during the daytime. It's this like tranquil trance. And like I had everyone who came in my stream was like, yo, where's this sick song from? Like, what playlist are you listening to? I'm like, this is in game. And they're like, wait, what? Like, I want this music now. Like, you just play the game. And then there's a forest area where they just went like all out with this song. It's probably like the most impressive song in the game. And it's just even like the dungeon music, like the remix, like they have these techno remix stuff. It was the most impressive soundtrack through and through. And that's not even to talk about, we haven't talked about, they dropped the story raid stuff this week. That was the new thing. It's been 2 weeks since the release, and they released the new story raid stuff.
Yeah.
And the first fight you do, it's a remix of Force Your Way from Final Fantasy VIII.
Sing that one.
The battle music from Final Fantasy VIII.
Let's see if it's like dun 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 dun.
You might mistake it for
sure,
Final
sure,
Fantasy
sure.
VII,
Yeah.
but it's
Wait,
not.
did
No.
that help?
Yeah, it did. It absolutely did help.
They have the
It's like the.
and then there's the Overworld music.
Yeah.
They did a version of the Overworld music as well.
That's weird because they already added Gunblades, right? They already gave their
that's the
firm
thing. The
nod to
raid
8.
theme is Final Fantasy VIII-ish.
Oh.
It's Eden. So like
Cool.
The percussion in Force Your Way is like really
okay,
good.
do you know the summon ability or the special ability Guardian in Final Fantasy VIII? The very elaborate like ability where it like protects the planet and it shoots a beam out into space, and then like it ends up hitting the enemy into like the galaxy, into the center of a Milky Way galaxy, and it explodes.
Is that the last one?
Yeah.
Okay. I do remember working
The
hard to
very
get
first
that one.
boss in this game, in the story raid, does that move to you, and you see it rendered like in this game's engine. I was like, wait, what?
That's
They're
pretty
actually
fun.
doing the final. I was like, oh, this is amazing. They took two of my favorite primal fights, Leviathan and Titan.
Yeah.
And they redid their designs, like the actual character models for both. And they also redid their song. Like their songs have been done like I think twice now. They've done a third version now that's just like just outstanding. I was like, how do you keep coming up with amazing ways to do the same song but like remixing it?
Yeah.
Frickin' Titan, it like embraces this fight that caused so much trouble for like old school players of Final Fantasy XIV. It like embraces those tropes of being knocked off by ridiculous like moves that like you just can't see or aren't telegraphed. It does this thing, like it messes with you because it used to be like if you're in front of it, it did this move that would knock you off. Now it's like it does the complete opposite. Like if you're in front of it, you're safe, but then you got to move to the side. The thing it does that's so amazing in the fight, he transforms. He's got like these gears on him, these spinning like wheel things.
Yeah.
He turns into a Mario Kart and drives around the arena and like tries to knock you off. It's like he just like a transformer. He goes bum, 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 and he goes vroom, and it's like what?
And then instead of doing damage to you, he just tries to knock
He
you
literally
off.
just knocks you off the arena so you die. It's like, and he keeps going back and forth really fast, and it's just like stop driving around. It's not fair.
Is Guardian an optional summon in Final Fantasy VIII?
Yeah, I mean they're all optional.
No. I mean, okay. I just don't think I encountered Guardian in Final
like
Fantasy
you
VIII.
got to go like Diablo. You got to go out of your way for. I think.
Well, you got to do the lamp for Diablos.
Diablos, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VIII is frustrating for me because when I played it, I got to this point and it wasn't like a battle that tripped me up. I just like couldn't figure out like the spot that I needed to go, and so like
sure.
I got fairly far into that game and then I just got stuck. And so I don't think like whatever this Guardian Force, I just don't think I saw.
I'm
in-game.
looking forward to remake so much.
Yeah, me too.
Remastered,
Me too.
excuse me,
Me too.
remastered. Yes.
Make it right.
Yeah.
Finish that off. See everything in that game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, maybe not everything, but like, you know what I mean.
Sorry, there was one thing I wanted to say before
Sure.
we move on from 14 is that, I was like criticizing it for being silent and not having voiceover, but I think it's also super important. I think they presume you are talking to other humans at the time. Maybe a headset, but you have a split focus. You know what I mean? You can go back and read that at any point.
Yeah.
In Borderlands, for instance, it is annoying when those characters are trying to talk when you are trying to talk. You have some characters like, oh, if I could call that guy something, it would be Douche Rocket. And I'm just like, so I have to like wait till this dialogue is done to just continue the conversation I was having.
Right. Yeah. But like, how do you solve that realistically? Like,
I think for 14 it works. Hey, if this is an online game, if you're going to be communicating with people, you know what I mean? It actually works just to have written dialogue.
Yeah, well, most of the main story stuff, the cutscenes you're experiencing by yourself, so those are mostly fully voiced.
You're not with friends during that stuff?
They're during dungeons.
Yeah.
You are when you run a dungeon, but there really isn't a lot of voice work during that. There's like an opening cutscene that introduces like any environment. It's like an opening environment shot, and at the end, there's like a little like you won celebration, like a little quick cutscene. But then when you exit, they've gotten better at this. They don't make you hold up other players from I'm in a cutscene. We gotta wait for you. They wait till you like exit the dungeon, and then they do like the post dungeon cutscene for you. Then where they have more story stuff. Oh, we're gonna have more dialogue. So a lot of the dialogue does happen when you're by yourself, but in boss battles, they like the story rate stuff. There is sometimes spoken dialogue by bosses, and it's nice to hear it. You know, sometimes it's important, but they also do like dialogue bubbles as well, in case you don't hear it because it's important for cues. But I mean, as awesome as all this sounds, I know we're going to be back here talking about this in a few months when that Nier raid drops.
Man, it's hard. Like, there have been multiple frame traps where I'm like, man, I really need to play Final Fantasy XIV, and it's true. But like, this year especially, like, I'm playing stuff all the time and feeling constantly behind, and like, it's so hard for me. It's like, it's not like a real problem. I don't want to like overemphasize it, but it's something that like I do carry a lot of guilt over. Like, and it's frustrating because like I really am spending a huge, enormous time playing games, and I'm in such a privileged position to do it, and I always feel guilty that I'm not playing more. And like, it's just not a healthy way to live.
It's
like,
not, dude, no.
Like, you have to just accept that there's only so much you can do. And I'm like still in the process of trying to accept that. But yeah, like with 14, I would love to. I really would. Like, that is such a sincere statement of like, man, I'd love to play 14. But Brandon said something interesting about Monster Hunter World, because I asked him about that. And he was like, you know, we kind of got that covered. Like, I know that there are going to be multiple allies that play that. And it's like, it's not that I wouldn't enjoy that, but like, my time could probably be spent doing other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like, kind of we have to think about it like that too, where it's like, I know you and Brad are caught up, and like I want to play it just on my own personally, but at least we have allies that are like talking about it and like up to date with it and can speak to it. And so like, maybe my time would be better spent on things that we aren't covering to that degree. I just thought that was a good perspective. That's all. But Kyle, you said the forbidden thing.
Oh, no, it's always me.
Yeah, it is you. This time it was Disney XD.
Oh.
Yeah. No explanation given.
If I just said Disney Channel, we would have been fine.
Yeah.
It was,
I don't know.
You had to go with XD.
Don't push it. Don't push it.
the XD, yeah. Had to do it.
But for this caught in a frame trap, so you're familiar with the show Jeopardy.
Yes.
They had a classic video games category on Jeopardy. I have 5 questions kind of going up. So we're starting with the $200 one and going all the way up to the $1,000 one.
These are actual Jeopardy questions?
These are actual word-for-word Jeopardy questions.
All right, let's win some money here.
I hope they're word for word. I like looked at them and then wrote them down. So if there's anything wrong, but like, you know, they should be accurate. Anyway, so you guys are going to be competing. The rule of Jeopardy, of course, is that you have to answer with a question. So I'm going to ask you these real Jeopardy questions. Make sure you phrase the answer in the form of a question, and whoever comes out first and says it, that'll be great. All right. The first question is, try explaining to your kids how this 1972 4-letter arcade game from Atari was...
What is Pong?
Correct. Kyle's on the board. Introduced in 1982, this sequel, the way they phrase some of these questions, this sequel had as big an appetite as her male predecessor.
What is Ms. Pac-Man?
Correct!
Damiani did the motion for the.
Number 3. He was a bouncing orange critter with a big nose and an asterisk in his name. An asterisk in his name.
What is
Damiani?
Okay.
Hold on. Damiani, sometimes I can't tell. Like, just be vocal. I will respond to voice. Kyle.
What is Cubert?
Cubert is correct.
You know what's weird?
I was worried that these were going to be a little too easy.
I was going to say, what is Zoink?
Oh.
My first impulse was the word Zoink.
Not familiar with Zoink.
I don't think Zoink's a thing.
Okay.
For some reason, I was imagining Cubert, and I was like, is that thing's named Zoink?
Oh, sure.
But it's always swearing. I don't even know where Zoink came from. Okay.
Number 4, appropriately, the highest lance won in this classic game. Less appropriately, Damiani. Joust. Damiani on the board.
Damiani said one word and did not phrase it in his form of a question.
Kyle, I was so excited that Damiani was answering that I completely did not pay attention to the fact.
That's why I don't watch and play
Trebek's
Jeopardy.
not giving you the points, dude.
Format always
Kyle, would you
messes
like
with
to
me.
answer?
What is Joust?
What is Joust? Kyle takes it. You know what? That hurts, but you're right to do that. All right, the last one. This is a $1,000 question.
Okay.
Make sure you answer in the form of a question. You had left, middle, and right fire buttons in this game. Also, the name of a U.S. Army unit known as MICOM.
What is Missile Command?
What is Missile Command is right. Kyle, it was a clean sweep. That was a clean sweep.
I do believe Damiani knew some and just had a hard time buzzing in.
Yeah. I couldn't tell if there was, like, maybe a little bit of doubt there.
Yeah, I'm not, like, arcade retro stuff, not the biggest knowledge about. Like, I mean, I know him eventually, but also, like, Jeopardy's format has always messed with me.
Sure.
Like, having to, like, have the, like, it giving you the answer and think of the question, it's like, yeah. It's backwards in my head, and I'm like, it takes me an extra second, so congrats, Kyle.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I wanted to do this is just because I thought it was interesting, like the kinds of questions that they ask, like when they include video games, how do they include them? Yeah. Of course, this category was focused on classic games. But.
Right, and which I think, like, I don't even know what an average Jeopardy age range, but I bet they nailed that category. Yeah,
so this category was a clean sweep. I was initially just going to do like different video game questions, not necessarily classic focused, but the ones that were like modern were way too easy.
Oh, got it. That's funny.
Like they pretty much answered themselves. And it's funny because the classic game category, kind of speaking to your age point, they crushed it. Like they burned through, at least in the YouTube clip that I was watching, they burned through it. Whereas the modern one, they fumbled abysmally. Yeah, it's interesting. But Kyle, you're going to have to think of a way to get us out of here. Maybe classic video game inspired, maybe not. Okay. But before we get there, this wonderful segment is brought to you by some sponsors. First, we have Greg, TheDarkKnight Kettering. Thank you, Greg. Next, we have Zoteg. Do you play Final Fantasy XIV? Are you on the Crystal Data Center? Search at Zoteg on Twitter for a link to an EZA Crystal Discord server. Thank you, Zoteg. Next, we have JoJo's Dent Co. Thank you, JoJo's Dent Co. After that, we have Accounts Payable, who once again will let us give a free shout-out to anything. Concept, a game, a video, whatever you want it to be.
Can I do my shout-outs now? I could do this with this opportunity.
You can do it.
The 3 games that I want to... I'm going to do 3.
Okay. Do it.
Okay.
Go nuts.
Here are the 3 games I couldn't get on the podcast this week, so we got them in there. Shout-out to Breath of Fire 4. Shout-out. Shout-out to Mextermination Force. Big shout-out. And shout out to Caro Blaster. Shout out. 3 highly recommended games.
Kyle, I'm gonna go a little bit farther with that. In addition to shouting them out, which I appreciate, give me like a 1 to 2 sentence summation of what's cool about them.
Breath of Fire 4, artful pixel art, fun RPG that just doesn't wallow for too long. A lot of wallowing in RPGs, I feel like. Mextermination Force, it's Bionic Commando, the format of Bionic Commando, but the levels are only bosses, but they're bosses that act like levels. They're just huge robotic bosses. Really fun game. Caro Blaster, 2D shooter, really fun from the Cave Story designer. Excellent, fun game to play.
Damiani, I think you reviewed Caro Blaster GT.
Did you?
I did.
What'd you give it?
Pretty good score.
I'd give that thing like a 9.3, dude.
I forget what it was. Ryan Stevens said you're reviewing this one day.
Wow.
It's like, he said, here you go, you're reviewing it.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah, it was good, though.
Thank you, Accounts Payable. Next, we have Gift of Heaven. Speaking of RPGs, Gift of Heaven is a free 3DS RPG which strives to be as funny as Earthbound, efficient as Chrono Trigger, and epic as Final Fantasy VI. Gift of Heaven quadruples every data limit of RPG Maker FES, using passwords to unite 4 game files as one bold explosion. OM Hawkstelter is cooking the rip-roaring, full-blast Tolkien, Potter, Forrest Gump combo meal you deserve to eat. And them Hawkstelters don't skimp on the shrimp. Gift of Heaven's 43-minute promotional short film, Symphonia Anathema, is now available on the official Gift of Heaven YouTube channel. You could download the prologue August 7th via the RPG Maker FES 3DS app. Crunch time is here, and the pain is brutal. I must keep reminding myself that I am on a holy mission. I want to change the world, but more importantly, I seek the Hall of Greats. Thank you, Gift of Heaven. That is our last regular sponsor. Now it's time for the mega sponsor. We've got ViewSonic, which is pretty cool. You probably know ViewSonic as the California-based company that's been one of the world's leading monitor providers for the past 30 years. Now, with ViewSonic Elite, they're bringing gamers an expansive line of professional gaming monitors. Whether you want to play like the pros on the esports stage or become immersed in the action set in front of you, ViewSonic Elite has you covered with a range of powerful specs and minimalist designs that are a tasteful addition to any modern PC setup. Learn more about ViewSonic Elite, new product releases, and upcoming giveaways on social media by following @ViewSonic Gaming or visiting viewsonic.com/elite. Kyle, have you figured out a way to get us out of here?
You know what classic arcade game I think holds up, design-wise? Frogger.
Sure.
I think Frogger has legitimately good art design and game design. And so, we're about to ride a truck right out of here. You hit a frog.
I was worried there for a second that was only going to put us deeper in the frame. But I think the horrible accident at the end, the sacrifice, we made it out. I want to talk about a game. So it's, like I mentioned, I have been pretty preoccupied with Fire Emblem that I want to talk about it. So I haven't had too much time for other things. Just got to play a little bit of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. But I did dabble in Void Bastards.
Oh, cool.
And Void, it was cool. It was one of those experiences where I didn't really know what to think. Like, I'd kind of tuned into streams, but they didn't give me a great sense of, like, what is this game really? And so I was going into it pretty fresh. And man, I like it. Like, I was interested in it, but it really grabbed me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And kind of the setup for it is it's this roguelike game, and you play as a prisoner. And the game will be like, hey, you need to find these things. And it will tell you, like, hey, it's on this ship over here. But to get there, you kind of have to hop from ship to ship. So you're on this map, and there are all these points. And all these points are different ships. And you have to keep jumping from point to point in your own ship to find the items that you need. And it's really cool because you can decide, you're very limited on resources. So when you start, you'll get a prisoner and you like don't know what their qualities are going to be. So they like, I had one where it was like you're a smoker, and so you might just like randomly cough as you're walking around and alert enemies. And so that's something you have to deal with.
I like that.
Yeah. And so there's just a ton of randomness. So you might you don't know what the map is going to look like, and you only have a limited number of fuel. So eventually you'll have to stop and like get fuel so you can keep pushing across the map. And if you do decide to land, like before you land, you can kind of see like, okay, it's this type of ship. I know there's going to be like a med station on there so I can heal, or I know there's going to be food and I need food so I don't starve. And so that I can also get health back from food. And so you kind of have to make these decisions like, okay, do I want to stop here or do I want to keep going on? Is this going to be too difficult for me or not? And you only start out with a pistol. And another reason you want to explore is because you'll find items where you can craft new guns and new things that'll help and make it easier. And also, when you die and you get a new prisoner, and the way that it does it is very funny, where like you're just completely like indispensable. I'm sorry. You're treated as completely disposable by like this robot, where he's like, okay, like bring another one on. It's very like cold corporate feeling with it, which kind of contextualizes the fact that you're playing as a bunch of different people. It's a nice little wrapper around the whole thing, and whatever the things that you get for one character, on the next one, you'll have access to that stuff. And so it's like you're making it a little bit easier for yourself with death. But when you do land on a ship, let's say you decide to explore, you're limited by oxygen. So it's like you have 7 minutes of oxygen. Try to like get as much as you can. And you're limited on ammo. And like if you run out of ammo, like that's it unless you find some. Mm-hmm. And so... I think design-wise, what is cool about this game is I feel like they really thought about the tutorialization, where they wanted to explain enough to you that you could understand how the flow worked, but they didn't want to explain so much that they would be kind of creating the strategy for you. And it's been really satisfying just at the very beginning of the game. I've only played about an hour of this, where like... You run into these weird creatures, and some of them are called like tourists, and they're these like big lumps that are kind of just like slide across the ground. And when you get close to them, they'll kind of light up like a light bulb, and then like a second later they'll explode. And I was shooting them at first, and I learned very quickly like, oh, they have an explosion radius, and so if I shoot them too close, like I'm going to get hurt. And they can do a lot of damage. And so it's like, okay, well, I know that. Like, don't shoot them close. But then I was like, maybe I shouldn't spend ammo on them at all. Like, just run up to them, trigger their explosion, and try to frantically run away. And that was cool, too, where it was like, oh, okay, I'm understanding these enemies. Like, I can really run out of ammo so fast, I don't need to kill them. And you're just constantly making decisions like that, where it's like, okay, I'm worrying about my oxygen. How much of this ship do I really want to explore? Like, is it better to risk it and spend resources and hurt myself? Because it's like once you get damaged, like you're carrying that damage with you unless you eat food or go to a med station. It's not like it recovers when you go back to your ship. And there have even been moments where I'm like, oh my god, like everything here is way too strong. Like going into the ship and being like, nope, and turning right back around and going back to the safety of my own ship. And it's just, yeah, I love that. I love that feeling of learning and discovery in games where like they give you enough that you can do it and you can piece that stuff together, and you're not running into that wall of like, wait, like I'm screwed. Why did this happen? And so yeah, it's just a really fun, cool game. It has like this neat like cel-shaded comic book aesthetic, and even when you die, there will be like it'll present itself in like a panel format where it'll be like, okay, yep, another person, shuffle them in. It'll be like panel to panel, and you're clicking through. And so yeah, it's really great so far. I'm curious once I play more of it, and I'd be interested to see other opinions as well as like what people don't like about it. The shooting feels like it's intentionally a little simple. Like you can't aim down sights, for instance. And so it's just as simple as possible for you to like, I don't think they want you to like circumvent the decisions that you need to make. Like they don't want you to be able to cheese it where it's like too easy for you to get through, or like make it too easy to hit things. Because I think they kind of want to have that decision of like, no, I'm deciding to shoot this thing, be kind of a risk, kind of have it be more of that strategy aspect as opposed to a shooter aspect. Not that isn't there, it totally is, but I like that. And I think it's an interesting kind of like, how much of a shooter do we make this? How much of like a strategy survival game do we make this? And the push and pull between those things.
It's what I wanted to talk about, Ben, is because I think very few video game trailers are visually striking, and this one is. Right. When I saw that trailer, I'm like, wow, this game looks different. Right. And I am just curious if it holds up throughout gameplay. You know, does it still feel good? Does it still look interesting to you after an hour or so?
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, for instance, where we kind of had the conversation of like, I wonder if this will still be good at the end of 10 hours. And I kind of feel like maybe like I like it right now, but I'm not 100% convinced that I'm going to feel as strongly about it at the end of the 10 hours as I am at the very beginning. With Void Bastards, I feel like I would, at least right now. It's hard to say that with confidence, but I stopped playing because I had other things to do, not because I was bored or it was getting repetitive or I felt like the game was being unfair. It was like, oh man, I could keep playing this. Yeah. It's kind of how I felt with Dota Underlords. I was like, no, I have to stop. Otherwise, I'm just going to eat up way more time playing this. But Kyle, I think the thing that might be tough is it definitely feels like a roguelite where it's like you're playing it for that thrill of survival, for that thrill of seeing how far you can get along this map, for that thrill of unlocking new things. There's context for sure, and there's humor, and it's a cool visual style, but there's not really you're not in it for the story, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Does that immediately turn you off?
No, like to me, it sounds like FTL. It sounds like FTL, except like your encounters are just first-person levels. So yeah, I mean, like to me, having to redo stuff is always annoying. You know what I mean? So like losing that progress, and like even if I have a tiny bonus, it just kind of sucks to have to go and through that part over and over. It starts from square one. But I get the appeal, man. Yeah. You know, and Damiani's still playing FTL because he gets a different, I don't say story, scenario each time.
Right.
And so, yeah, like I can see where it's like the unknown is what makes it exciting. You can't speedrun it. You can't be like, oh, okay, I know there's health in that room and I know that I can get ammo in that room. It is super fun, Ben, the idea that you're on a spaceship and you don't know where to go. Right. That's really cool.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I get that. It helps games. It definitely helps games.
Yeah. Not knowing where to go, like I love how they kind of break down the decisions that you have to make, because when you go to a ship, there's a room in each ship that you can go to that I've seen so far where it's like you can reveal information. Like if you need fuel, you can go to this room and hit this button and you can see where the fuel is. But it's like, do I even want to do that? Like, do I need that information? And you can spend money. You have this currency where it's like, okay, we'll reveal where the fuel is for free, but if you want us to show you where the enemies are on the ship, you have to pay money. So it's another decision that you have to make. And it's like, is it worth it? Like, I know the things here aren't maybe that difficult, but I'm low on ammo, I may be low on health.
How expensive is it?
I think it's like 10, I want to say 10.
I guess, I mean, like, is it a marginal cost, or is it like, oh, that costs a lot? You know what I mean?
It depends on your situation. It depends on how much money you found at that point. Like, it could feel like a lot, and it has felt like a lot. Mm-hmm. But then other times it's like, oh, I have enough money that it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so it just depends on the situation. And that's the thing is, like, when you get a new prisoner, it's like, oh, I don't have any pistol ammo. I'll have to use other things. And, like, there was this gun where I had a lot of ammo, and I was like, oh, what does this do? And you shoot an enemy, and you'll poison them, and it does very slowly damage over time. And it's like, oh, this will kill them, but I have to shoot them, wait for them to chase after me, not get hit, and then they'll die. But I have a lot more ammo for this thing than I do the other thing, so I'm going to try to use this. I'm going to try to make this work. And I love that. Like, I feel like the game is just constantly changing the way that I play, and it feels so smart where it's like, any decision that you make, like, you got to work around it somehow. Like, there's going to be a huge cost that you're going to pay for down the line. And I think that's really cool. So, yeah, I would like to play more of it. It's that kind of thing where, like, the first hour was strong enough where it's like, man, this feels like it could be in my top 10 for the year. Wow. But it's like you're saying, will I feel this way after 10 hours? I don't know.
Sure.
Could go either way.
Yeah. I'm very curious when you play more of it, Ben.
Yeah.
Because part of the appeal of, like, for me, for FTL is, like, you're talking about, like, the phase that you're in right now where, like, you're still learning situations and, like, what can I do to react in these situations and which choices will have which effects, and, like, kind of like not seeing everything it can throw at you, but, like, being better able to read situations and react to them.
Right.
Where the point, like in FTL, it's like you feel helpless, very much helpless in the beginning. You feel like the odds are very much stacked against you.
Right.
And after so much time playing that game, you get to a point where you feel, no, despite any situation, I feel like I have a realistic chance of turning it into something I can salvage. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can be in command of a lot of situations because I I know I could try and take this course of action. I'm kind of curious if this game will eventually feel like that too, where it turns from a feeling of like the unknown and not really knowing anything, like not knowing enough, and like still reacting to situations based on limited information to the point where you're like, I love seeing how crazy things can get and how I can get out of them. Like what I come up with to get out of them, because I feel like I have that command over everything in the game that I feel I can legitimately get out of any situation, if I'm smart enough, essentially.
Right.
And I
that
feel
there's no ship you would turn around in, basically.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like that's what I love about FTL is like I keep pushing to see where the limits are. Like what is an unwinnable situation? Like where does it get to the part where like there's almost nothing you could have done in this situation, which, you know, I love trying to find where those points are. And in this game, you know, how far will the limits of this game stretch, essentially?
Right. And that's a really good point that you bring up, because like now, like in that hour of playtime, a lot of that is just trying to figure out like, all right, like how do I move forward in this? Like it's there's not really an expectation of like, I'm going to get to the end, or I'm going to like get all the way down this map. And so I wonder, like, once you kind of get to that point, do you reach a section where it's like, okay, like, yeah, technically you can get through this, but it feels so brutal that like you die, and then it's like, man, do I really want to do that whole trek again? I don't know. And so, yeah, I am curious how it'll handle like mid and late game stuff, and if it is designed in a way where you feel that motivation to keep going and you feel like you want to, and it doesn't become a chore.
Yeah,
for sure. Today on this Frame Trap, we are going to have a HOTTAKE.
Oh, damn it!
That is a little bit more, I don't know if theoretical is the right word, but broad. It's something that I think we might have talked about before on a past Frame Trap. We're 86 episodes in the show, so I'm not sure if we've discussed it before, but it's something where, like, as I was sifting through topics for Frame Trap, it definitely came into my mind, and I thought, like, you guys would have some insightful things to say about this. So there was a show that I really liked called Excellent Adventures. I loved it. It was like my favorite thing on the internet. It was with Gutex and Mike Ross, and they would sit down and play like Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter 5 together, and they had amazing chemistry.
And they're just sitting on a couch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they like, I feel like they were both players where they weren't like the absolute best in the world, and so like they would still lose and get salty about it, and that was really fun. Mm-hmm. But they were good enough that it was entertaining watching them play.
Yeah.
And then they would get guests on, and then the banter that they would have with guests. It felt like two really good fighting game players in a room having the time of their lives. And on top of that, they also had the recipe with Sajam and Tasty Steve, and that was really entertaining as well, where they also had great chemistry, and it was fun watching them play Tekken or Guilty Gear, whatever they ended up playing. The reason why I'm bringing this up is I feel like not just within fighting games, but within a lot of genres, a show like that is extremely valuable, or at least it was really valuable to me. I would say Excellent Adventures was a huge contributing factor in me being increasingly interested in fighting games. Like it pushed that love forward just because they made it look like it was so much fun. And you would kind of get a mixture of everything. You would get just on a basic level, you would get the highs of victory and the salt of defeat. Mm-hmm. But you would also get them talking about their life in the community and talking about the community aspect, or you would get them talking about breaking down like different mechanical things where it's like, oh, this is why this thing happened. And I think that is really valuable because it wasn't like a stream where it's like, okay, this person is streaming for 8 hours. And I love streams. I watch streams all the time. But I have a couple of frustrations with streams.
Sure.
And those are that, like, I know it's a consequence of the job. I know that we do it. But it can be difficult when you're, like, trying to watch somebody and every 5 minutes it's like, oh, wow, thank you for the $10. Thank you for the $20. Especially if they're big name and it's happening all the time. It's a consequence. It's not even like a criticism, but it hurts the viewing experience, in my opinion. The other thing is like, when you do something so long form like that, it can be hard to break down, and it can be hard to commit to, and it can be hard to know like what you're gonna get out of it because it's just them kind of hanging out for 6 hours. And so I think there's like a really big opportunity for games that are trying to have these lengthy life cycles to have like an Excellent Adventures, where it's just two people who know what they're talking about, who have great chemistry and charisma. It doesn't have to be two people. You could do a bunch of different formats. But like getting out there in a way that like makes their game seem fun and can appeal to both hardcore people and casual people. And thinking about like the next generation, like I would love to see more games do that. I would love like on the official Nintendo channel, like an Excellent Adventures for Smash or that type of format where I can tune into people that are humorous, that have fun, that it'd be fun just watching them play Smash in every week, and it's not 10 hours long, and they get guests in. Do you think the concept that I'm describing is a possibility? Is it worth the money? Can it be done in a way that people like?
I think it's very hard to replicate what Mike Ross and Gutex had. You know what I mean? It's hard to say like give me another two of those. It's super hard to do that. They're both very funny in very unique ways, and as you said, like just play off each other super well. But I mean, I think they stopped just because they got burnt out from it, right? Like they just like I don't know if views were down or anything, but yeah.
To my understanding, so Mike Ross also had Capcom Pro Talk, and there was a pretty big frustration where Capcom was like, this isn't making us any money. And I think he felt pretty bitter about that because of how much work he put into it and not getting that recognition. And just esports as a whole. But yeah, there was definitely a falling out with Excellent Adventures. And I that leads me to the second part of my question.
Sure.
Is like, I think for these things to really work, to get the talent that you need and to get the production that you need to really make it appealing, you need like the game companies to get behind it. You need support from a Nintendo or a Capcom or whatever it is. But that brings in a lot of problems. They have to understand why it's special. And they have to do it in a way that supports it and allows it to continually grow, but doesn't stifle it, doesn't feel sanitized, doesn't feel corporate, that keeps the spirit of these are just people who love this. And like, do you think maybe those two mentalities of like, ultimately at the end of the day, we're trying to sell a product, like can authenticity work in that environment?
It's tough. It's tough because like Nintendo currently is on their YouTube channel. I'm trying to be polite, but let's not be uninteresting. They're very professional. They get their information across, but I think there is nothing interesting about how they do it. Even when it's just like the Nindies Direct, it's just, hi, I'm this person. Here's a pun. Here's the game. And like even like the E3 Nintendo Directs where they would like do interviews, those were at least like interesting. They had like some sort of visual aspect to it. Like here's Star Fox Zero and here's, I'm in Japan for this to explain to you what this stuff means to me. Like that's still like interesting at least. But I think, their YouTube presence currently is very Disney Channel. No, not even XD, dude. Just straight Disney Channel. But I think that's what they want to be, right? If I came in here just being like, be weird, guys. Where's your wacky lizard stuff? They'd be like, what? And it's like, just shoot slime out of your mouths. And they'd be like, stop it. We are happy with our views. We're doing extremely well on this channel. And they are, right? And so, like, it'd have to be, Ben, I think, like a mid-tier publisher who would take the chance on something like this.
Yeah, you definitely need someone who's willing to take the risk to basically, you talked about authenticity. And I think that's a hard thing to nail from a corporate perspective, because you're already fighting an uphill battle of that. You're viewed as a company. You're viewed as no matter what, no matter how much you're trying to be my friend, no matter how much you're trying to seem cool and very passionate about this, at the end of the day, you're still trying to sell me a product, and I'm a consumer. And I feel like with bigger companies, they can try and do that, but you usually get like too many cooks in the kitchen. You have like marketing coming in, salespeople get like all these people get involved because they all have stakes in this product and they all want to see it succeed. And they all have different visions and they just collide, and you get something that again, trying to not to be mean, but like Nintendo tries to do Nintendo Minute, and like I don't find any of those interesting. And it's like their best attempt to like, hey, we're going to show you what's like cool this week, like what you should be interested in. And it just comes off as so dry and stale. Even their Nintendo Power podcast, such a huge opportunity there. It still comes off way too procedural. It still comes off as we have certain bullet points, marketing points we need to hit, despite maybe trying to like wrap in a cool interview here and there with somebody. But it's still trying to sell me something. Right. There are certain things, and there are always going to be certain things that are off limits where the flip side, the complete opposite, is someone who's already a person who's involved in the community. So like you're talking about like Mike Ross and Gutex, they weren't originally employees of these companies. They were doing it because they love this. They love fighting games. They love Street Fighter. They were doing it out of a genuine passion for what they were covering. Yeah. And that also comes with risk as well. It's like, can a company like, oh, they're saying nice things about our stuff, but what happens when they start being critical of it? Do we want to be supporting that message where they're being too critical of our product? Oh, let's get them involved. Let's bring them into the fold. And now there's like guidelines. Like it becomes a balancing act. And now do you lose some of that authenticity when you kind of like endorse it, when you become official and give some guidelines? But as you said, like a mid-tier company might be willing to take that risk. Like, hey, we actually have no guidelines for you. Right. Other than saying profanity and like calling this game a piece of shit or something, go all out, be you, and do what you want to do. But I feel once those things become too successful, eventually things get popular, more people get involved, more money gets involved. Eventually it's going to get to a point where all good things come to an end. I think the only way for this to exist is I feel it's almost impossible, Ben, to have best of both worlds. I feel like you either have to let someone in the community be the voice and make that type of show, like a group of people, two people, even an individual who fulfills that role and like can do like an excellent adventures type show for a different game. Or you got to accept like maybe better production values, like more corporate-y and more structured, but you're losing a bit of that authenticity. Like it's like lightning in a bottle almost with with excellent adventures. Like I don't think you can understand what it took to make it, but replicating it, there's no formula to replicate that like 100%.
And I don't think this is, as much as I love Excellent Adventures and do want to see that like just come back in exactly the way that it was, you're right. And I accept that reality. I think more of what I'm saying is I think there's a space for that type of content, even if it's not perfect. And so like Capcom Pro Talk, I think is a good example where that was Capcom Pro Talk, but it didn't feel inauthentic. It's extremely authentic.
It's funny. And I mean, he had a set and like a desk and everything, right? But did he have a desk? Am I remember that wrong?
No, they like sat on like stools.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was just like, I know.
But that show was hilarious.
It really
was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about maybe something a little bit more recent. The combat casts that they did for Mortal Kombat 11. I don't think these were perfect, but I really liked them. And it felt like, in a lot of ways, they were trying to keep the spirit of that. Where obviously, these were all NetherRealm guys. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're trying to sell you a product. Obviously, they're trying to make Mortal Kombat 11 look as good as possible. But I think the way that they approached it and showed off a character and talked about it and maybe talked about their experience, how they got hired at NetherRealm, their experience with Mortal Kombat, and then just ending it with people fighting each other, like that was really effective, and it honestly made me more interested in the game. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, where people like that, where you can, it's not just somebody getting out saying a pun and then being like, here's the release date, like really trying to play the game in a way that feels natural and helps you understand, like, oh, maybe I'll feel this way when I play it. I think there's space for that.
Yeah.
Because the other thing with streaming that I want to bring up, and I want to see if you agree with me here. So you have big names like let's just say Maximilian, for instance, where it's like he plays a bunch of different fighting games. I think because he wants to, but I also think there's incentive to cover the next big thing. And we have that where it's like there's strong incentive for us to not just talk about the same things all the time, but to constantly be looking ahead. and that's great too. But for these games that are trying to carve out a space and to exist for long periods of time, I do think something more personal will really help them.
Yeah. Like, think of like Samurai Showdown, right?
Right. And the thing is, man, the Samurai Showdown is so exciting to just like play with a friend.
Yeah.
It really is.
I think it could, like, that show could work for a year, but then I feel like that's the lifespan of Samurai Showdown is like 1 year.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it depends on a bunch of things, right?
Yeah.
Like, new characters are always exciting. We know the characters that are coming for Samurai Showdown already, and so it's like, okay, those are going to release over time. Like, you can keep interest through that. Like, if let's say there are these two people playing Samurai Showdown, it's fun to watch them, and it's this like short form thing. I want to watch them play the new character, and that maybe makes the new character more prominent in my mind. I'm more aware of it. Like, I don't know. Samurai that would be really awesome for Sam. I think it would really benefit.
I think it's a
that.
good candidate, and like SMK could just be like, oh, we don't care, go nuts.
Yeah.
What do we have to lose?
Right, but I guess the thing that I don't know, and the real question to answer is like, what we're talking about, like how much money does that cost? Like what sort of resources do you have to allocate? Who needs to be behind the scenes to make a show like that happen in the way that it needs to take off?
Yeah, and when it's coming from a corporate environment, it's usually more costly than you think.
Yeah.
Just because things are a little bit more official, like budgets have to be allocated for it, like people's time, like they're getting billed, like those are hours, like do you hire a specific person? It gets way more costly than you think. And
I mean, you've been there, I guess, actually.
Yeah, that's what like I'm trying to allude to is that like there's an expectation of a return on your investment when you do this. No matter how much you believe in this and how well it comes off, if it's not ultimately like someone who's in a position of being the boss is going to be, I have accountability. There needs to be a goal for this show or what we're trying to do here. What is the stated goal of this? And if it's not reaching those metrics that have been doled to the people working on that, producing that show, it's, hey, we got to reevaluate this. Do we need to change things? And ultimately, do we need to cancel and shelve this thing because it is not for what we're spending on it? We're not getting a return on investment. And that's why I think it's like that's why it's so much more of an uphill battle with that. It's because, as Kyle was saying, he said like it felt like a year for Samurai Showdown. Like that's the unfortunate reality. How well a game is in like mainstream or like its popularity where it's like doing well, especially with the age of Twitch. How long is it up there in like the top few games is the more likely to strike when the iron's hot and like get that going. And having a show like what you're asking here could definitely go a long way in helping to sustain that go even longer. But eventually all these games are going to reach a point where, almost all of them, will reach a point where we can't afford to keep doing this anymore. Like the game is like, we're going to have to unfortunately rely on our community to carry the mantle for the rest of the way. Like we'll do what we can, but we're moving on to like either a sequel or we're moving on to other projects and stuff like that. And this is no longer a priority for us. Right. And I think that's the unfortunate reality of like just being, part of a corporation.
Right. And maybe this is inaccurate, but I feel like when I take a look at a lot of fighting games, I think that is a reasonable thing that you said where it's like, okay, eventually we're going to reach a point where like this isn't going to work out. But then I think about something like Smash. And Smash is kind of eternal in the sense that, like, and especially with Smash Ultimate right now, and even looking at Smash 4 on a console that wasn't successful, like, Smash 4 had a life until Smash Ultimate. Like, it's like Smash is going to be around. Smash isn't going anywhere, like, in one form or another. And you can argue the specifics of it, but I think it is true that Smash is going to be around. And so to me, that has tremendous opportunity. Like, why not invest in these things where you don't have to know, like, we don't know if we're going to be around in 2 years. Like, Smash Ultimate is going to be around in 2 years.
And are you asking this of, like, Nintendo? Like, why is Nintendo this?
Right, and it just doesn't...
Well, yeah. There's an unfortunate reality, easy answer for that when it comes to Nintendo, sadly, is that they are only going to go so far with their support. And their support usually comes with a lot of steep terms, as we've seen in the past. Yeah. Like, it's been a learning process for them to get involved in this, but they only go so far. And I think it is a good working relationship where they are now with like the FGC and Smash community. But it's not it's still not enough. And I don't think they're going to go beyond that, what they're doing right now. I think what you've seen with their support is as far as they're going to go. They like doing their own thing. They do their own tournament. They do their own events for this. It's their own format. It goes against what the fighting game community has adopted. And their argument is, well, there's a larger audience out there than just the FGC. We have casual people who play this game for fun. We want them to feel the experience of like competition.
But doing this doesn't hurt those people. That audience isn't gonna. But doing this, everything that you're talking about with Nintendo, it has felt very begrudging. It has felt very dragging the feet. It has felt very okay, fine. Embracing it a little bit more effectively, and I think working with the community even more than they have been doing, I think would do wonders. It's something where like in the desert, a drop of water goes a long way, kind of a thing. Where it's it feels like they have the whole world in their hands. What do they really have to lose, honestly? I
mean, I agree with you. It's frustrating. Looking at it, it seems like the most obvious thing to do, but Nintendo they've given their answer. They won't want to cross a line where they're basically endorsing that Smash Brothers is a fighting game. They give out this message. Here's the reality. They're afraid that if they give this blessing, if they go all in on this, it could have repercussions. The larger picture here is what they're looking at.
Yeah.
This game is a phenomenal sales success. It blows away any other fighting game. No fighting game comes close to this because it's not viewed entirely as a fighting game by the larger world out there. And
it absolutely is.
There are a lot of people, even in the fighting game community, who still mock it as not being a fighting game, as a party game. That's a whole other separate discussion. But the point is, this game sells a lot based on the concept that it's not too elaborate of a game, that it's not a hardcore fighting game. It is a fun game you play with your friends, but it has been adopted by the fighting game community because it does have more intricacies than just that. And I don't think Nintendo wants to commit to that because it's basically taking a stance on it. And they've already taken their stance. And to pivot like that, they don't want to do it. And it comes also from Sakurai and their development team. They have given their philosophy on what Smash Brothers is to them and what it's always going to be. And they are giving as much as they're probably going to give. And that's just it. And I feel like what you want, ultimately, it's frustrating. It's not going to come from Nintendo unless there's a major internal change at some point. This is something the community has to do, but they have been doing, but they also feel shunned and frustrated as well. It's this long, dramatic history with them.
I don't know if I totally agree for a couple of reasons. And you saying that it's always going to be this way, I think we've had that mentality for a long time, but we have seen changes. We have seen more support. It has gotten better. It's not great. It's not where it could be. There's a lot of untapped potential, but it has slowly changed. And so I do think vocalizing this and saying this is important because I do think you have to call a spade a spade. Whatever arguments people want to get into about it being a fighting game or not, fine, but it has more entrants at EVO than any other game by a significant amount. It is the #1 most registered game at EVO, the most premier fighting game tournament of the year. Come on. It's support it for what it is and how people are playing it. How does that benefit you if you have this audience that is huge and hungry and passionate and you're just trying to say no, you don't get it? How does that help anybody? How does that help anybody? These are the people who are living and breathing your game. They're the ones advocating it. They're the ones that are getting eyeballs. In some cases, maybe thousands upon thousands of eyeballs. They are your advertisements. Why not support that passion in a way that makes sense?
Honestly, when it comes to Nintendo, this goes beyond even Smash Brothers, Ben.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure it does.
Nintendo wants to control the message. They are very draconian in controlling their products and how it is perceived by the public. The times you see them give way, even giving more this more support that you've said has happened. I agree with you. They've done more support for Smash and the fighting game community. It was done out of a reaction to backlash stemming back to when they were trying to pull it from tournaments because they didn't agree prize money should ever be associated with their game. They did not like the concept of people profiting off playing their game like that. It wasn't so long ago that they didn't like people putting their videos on YouTube and making money off them unless you agreed to this really, really old-fashioned agreement about you got to give us a share. And even streaming games on Twitch, they were very like, you really can't be doing this. They are very slow.
But public opinion forced them to change.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's going to take outcry from that. But I'm also saying it needs to be something that more than just like a big swell. Because Smash community has pushed back a lot. They've tried to make outcry against Nintendo since the Melee days about, hey, help us out, throw us a bone. Like we're trying to do all this, and like, can you meet us even like just a little bit of the way? And Nintendo wouldn't. They would not do it. It took a larger group of people, like major publications, like major outlets, major blogs reporting on that like blunder they had a few years back with Evo and pulling in the threat of pulling Smash Brothers from other tournaments. And they're like, everyone kind of like everyone rallied behind that. And I was like, yikes, everyone's against this. Let's work that out. But even that, it sounded like the specifics were like, we're going to give you some support, but all these tournament organizers, you're going to have to give us stuff as well. It sounds like Nintendo has almost like full control of the terms in any tournament they're involved in with Smash Brothers. Like the banning of any of the mods that made Melee and Brawl more competitive. Like they're like, those need to go away. Those absolutely have to go. Those can't be there. We cannot have a fan thing competing in popularity with our official product. Also, you need to be pushing our newer product. It's like Smash Brothers, that's why we had 2 Smashes with Wii U and Melee for that year. It's like Wii U was popular and stuff, but like Smash getting 2 games, it's popular. But like not giving another game, any other fighting game that could like you definitely show the diversity of the fighting games out there. Putting 2 Smash Brothers in at once is like, holy shit, like that only happened because yes, Smash is super popular, but the pressure from Nintendo there is like, you need to have, if you want Melee, us to support Melee there, you need to have our newest game there too, because I've been told so many times when like trying to do interviews with them that if you want to talk about older games, you have to work in something about an upcoming product.
And I think this is the real thing here too, is they don't want to linger on anything too long. And I think this is kind of like their design. Like think about Capcom, think about Street Fighter V. There's always something new coming to it, costume-wise, background-wise, character-wise. Smash is probably going to be done after their 5th character, the 5th DLC character. They don't have this running revenue with Smash. And so like they want to move on to the next thing. And also like Mario Kart, they won't be advertising right now, right? We could have a really cool Mario Kart show for 8 years and it would still be relevant. Mm-hmm. But I don't think like Nintendo would really want it too much. It's just like, okay, now play Mario Maker 2. You know, and then like, okay, now play Luigi's Mansion 3. Sure. Now play the new one, I think there is little incentive for them not to do that. You know what I mean? They have to sell the next thing.
But even with something as simple as DLC characters, why not do it? As long as that life cycle is, as long as we're getting new characters, why not do it? Because like you're saying, they want people to move on to the next thing. Yeah. They also want people to buy the new characters, and so like there is some incentive there.
Yeah.
But I mean, what else do they need to do? That here's what I'm like from their perspective. What I'm like the argument you're trying to make. They put out a trailer for like Banjo. The world, like the internet goes on fire. Everyone's interested in it. I'm gonna go rush out to buy it. And then you're going to see a million streams of it when it comes out of people playing it and saying how cool it is and stuff. Go buy it. Like, why do that? What justification do they have to put out this type of show you want? Like,
we're all doing the show for them.
Yeah, like everyone's doing the work for them. So it's like it's not at a point. I know we're just talking about Nintendo specifically, and this can go way beyond Nintendo. But like for them specifically,
I think this is the case. I think that is the mentality.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I think it's the wrong mentality because I think there have been entire games where the mentality has been let us build and establish goodwill with our audience. Let us show that we respect our audience, that we're listening to them, and that we will support them. And obviously, these are very different types of games, but I think Warframe comes to mind. I think Final Fantasy XIV comes to mind. And there are other examples that you can pull up here where I think, especially in this generation of games, that respect and authenticity has been lucrative. Like, not just like appreciated, but lucrative. Like, if it almost feels like some games exist entirely off of that. Like Path of Exile is a good example of that. And so I just like, from a straight business perspective, you're right. Like, people are going to do their job for them in the sense that the new character comes out, people will stream it, they'll get excited, it'll do well. But like, from a business perspective, don't you want to change with the times and think like maybe there's a way we can throw a little bit of money at this and take this even further and see a much greater reward? Like, isn't that worth trying out? Especially as Nintendo, when you are in that position? I don't know. Why not try to establish that relationship and appear like you care and appear on the cutting edge? And then the story becomes like, oh my God, look at how Nintendo is listening to fans. Look at this big change. They were never like this before. Think about all of the good press that generates and the rippling effect of like, people feel better about just supporting them in general. I wasn't going to buy a Switch Lite before, but man, they're really treating me right. I don't need this. I'm going to buy it. Like, obviously it's not as cut and dry as this. I understand, but I do think there is a logical thread there to follow. No?
I feel it's
yeah.
Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
No, I mean, we're just looking like at them realistically as businesses. You know what I mean? Like they Nintendo especially is doing fine. You know what I mean? Right. And so like they have no incentive to change what they're doing. And so like it would be really cool for them to, I don't know, embrace Smash differently and embrace that community differently. But it was the best-selling Smash Brothers game of all time, and they they look at their numbers and like, wow, we did the right things. Right.
Yeah. You're saying like,
that's the
why go in with a new mentality when the mentality that you went with did so well?
Yeah.
It's that, and I think in their minds they think they are doing new and innovative things.
Sure.
They look at the Nintendo Direct format like everyone's copying us now. Like we did this. Like they see themselves as on the front line of trying to disrupt the market, upend the establishment, essentially do something because they like won't go head to head with their competition. They've been doing this for like since the Wii for 13 years ago now. That's been their like MO is to just do things differently, and they see themselves as trendsetters. So I think in their minds they think they're doing it, and maybe when it comes to Smash they're like, our approach, look at it, we sold so well because we're not doing what every other fighting game's trying to do. Like we're not trying to be like them. We are our own thing. Right. That is why we are so big, and we're probably going to watch maybe other companies are going to try and emulate us more. Like I'd be more worried about like Capcom them maybe looking at like Smash's success and be like, what do we need to do differently to like, especially after Street Fighter V like had like not the greatest launch and
You're
kind
so
of floundered.
Right, dude.
They're probably like, what do we do for Street Fighter 6?
6 is just about knocking people off the stage. It's the only way to get a KO.
I mean,
Street Fighter 6 launches with Banjo.
Damiani, that is a really funny point. Ben, Banjo was the envy of everybody, right? Like everybody wants to have people reacting to their trailers like that. Like the lesson has been, I mean, obviously big guest characters have been a big thing in fighting games for a while, but yeah, I wonder, Damiani, like why other people don't. I mean, Nintendo's obviously the roster. It's obviously that, you know what I mean? And Banjo by himself wouldn't mean anything, but it's Banjo with the Nintendo, and that's why that's so heartfelt. And so, like, it is hard to capture that success of Smash Bros., but I do worry it is a very simple game, right? It has, attack and then your B moves and then jump and dodge. I wonder if it's like, hey, we should make more games that are this simple.
I mean, that's another. I mean, I wonder if you could bring that up, Ben. That's an argument that's actually going around in the fighting game community now.
Yeah.
Is the whole argument over whether it's better for fight. Like, there are a lot of passionate players in the competitive community saying, please stop making fighting games, quote unquote, more accessible / easy. It's not actually good for your game.
And that's a whole nother way to reframe this argument, though, where, like, trying to accomplish all of these things to just focus on the design of a game and to make it mechanically satisfying while also making sure you have enough content to like keep people interested and want to make them do that initial first person in the first place. That's a ton to do. Sometimes it seems like a nearly impossible task to appease all the different types of people who want different things out of fighting games. Totally. What I'm saying is, like, when they do try to do these things where they make things simpler, that creates a stigma amongst very hardcore people who are out there talking about this stuff all the time. And they're like, stop doing this, stop babying me, we don't need this. So what I'm saying is, why not have the people do the work for you more effectively? Don't worry about simplifying the game mechanics so much. Mm-hmm. Get people out there who can present these ideas in a way that makes sense and make it fun. They're already doing this work. Anytime a fighting game is coming out, they're doing tutorial videos.
I think Zero is really good. If you've seen his stuff,
yes, I have.
He's really
great.
Good.
Yes, I watch Zero a lot. I like Zero, but that's what I'm saying is I think you could get that message to even more people and maybe present it even more effectively. It's like, it's there. You don't even have to really do it. You just need to provide the platform and the support for it. And that way you're not dumbing things down. You're keeping that element of mystery and excitement. But you're also bringing more people into the fold. Maybe people who would never even consider trying to learn a game in that way. I don't know. I just I get the sense that what you're saying is that this is really unrealistic, but I can't let it go. It seems like it can't happen. It can't happen.
It's just mostly specific to Nintendo. You go with any other company, what you want I could realistically see it happening if the right things came together.
Yeah.
They would not say no. When it comes to Nintendo, I just think it is the one company where you're just going to encounter the most resistance. As much as they opened up, it's very strategic, and they're very strategic about what they do. There's always a method to the madness with them, and it's not completely impossible, Ben. I'm just saying it is the hardest nut to crack.
Sure.
Is with them.
It is. It's a hard nut to crack. Are we ready for some emails?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you guys for humoring me on that. I appreciate it.
That was a HOTTAKE.
That was a HOTTAKE.
Yeah.
There was some passions flaring on that HOTTAKE. First email comes in from John.
Okay.
He says, "Hey guys, recently I've been thinking about some of my fondest gaming memories, and I have come to the realization that a significant majority of them belong to games developed in Japan. Judging from the games,
Don't say.
Judging from games chosen to be in the Easy Allies Hall of Greats."
Yeah, okay, I was right about to get there, yeah.
Yeah, you must be able to sympathize.
Yeah.
For me, I think that there are a couple of reasons why this is the case. First, games developed in Japan tend to offer smaller, cozier playable areas and often give you a glimpse or a sense of a wider world without letting you visit in its entirety. Furthermore, it seems that Japanese developed games have historically paid attention to visual and oral aspects as well as tone. There's often a clear focus on the overarching aesthetic of the game. An obvious example of this is Okami, but you can sense it between different Final Fantasy games as well, for example. I think both of these factors spark the imagination and probably cause them to linger longer in the memory. You can call me out if I'm being unfair to Western games, however, I do believe I am onto something here. I'd like to get your opinions on the above. I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on the design and aesthetic differences between Eastern and Western games at the very least. Thanks for the last 3 years and keep up the great work. I've got two things to say about this.
Okay.
The first is that I don't think this is being fair. And I do agree that Easy Allies tends to focus on Japanese-developed games. Mm-hmm. And just coming from my own perspective, there are two driving forces for that. It's that when I was being first introduced to video games, specifically on console, most of the best games were being developed in Japan. That, you think about the NES, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, all of those very formulative things were in Japan. And so you're going to have an attachment for that. You're going to have a nostalgia, a huge driving factor. The other thing is, when I entered the industry professionally, this was around the time where Phil Fish was saying Japanese games suck now.
Yeah.
And Keiji Inafune was the Japanese game industry is doomed.
I remember this stuff,
and me being kind of exploring that and being there are great things that just are not getting attention.
Yeah.
And coverage then was different. I'm actually completely amazed at how things have turned around, where a lot of things that would never have been given the time of day at all 7 years ago super are now.
Because there's a real thing now.
Right, yeah. Right. And so it's really turned in a way that I didn't feel like it's possible, but I think that was kind of a perspective that I was coming at it from, where I was these things deserve more attention. But I don't think that's fair. I don't think that Japanese games are inherently better than Western games, or that they always do one thing better than Western games. Like, the pool is so big that I don't know how effectively you can make that case.
Historically, you can make the case.
Historically, in what way?
When you talk about previous generations.
Sure. So give me examples.
When you're talking about PlayStation, when you're talking about Super Nintendo, obviously, right?
Oh, sure. I'm talking today.
Yeah. So I have a weird idea that I think it's about what's important to your culture, where what draws your artists. You know, you talk about like you want to make your country appealing to the best scientists. You know what I mean? And so like you want to make your field appealing to the best artists. And it's hard for, let's say, like it's hard for, man, this is all so rude. But anyway, like you're a costume designer for a video game or a costume designer for a movie. It's much more of a bigger deal to be a costume designer for a movie. Just in the U.S., you know, like obviously, like that's a bigger deal. But like I think in Japan that wouldn't have been as like, way bigger deal. On the flip side of that, there was a time where like their names weren't even in credits, and so I just think that like there's a different weight though to video games, to the work that was put into them. You know how much the people. I don't want to say people in the West didn't care about the games they're making. Obviously, you know what I mean, but like. We almost killed the industry with Atari just kind of pooping them out, right?
Sure.
Whereas just like you have people like in Japan who just got game design as this art.
Yeah.
You have Shigeru Miyamoto who just like got it, man. It's just like, oh, I get this. This is like I can make this game fun mechanically and visually interesting, and I care about all these things. And so like he in the U.S. could have been making movies. I think he wanted to make movies, right? So it's just like it's whatever. I think just in Japan, the video game industry was a bigger deal, and maybe we're still feeling that still. Just like a lot of people growing up, just like, man, I want to make video games, as opposed to like, man, I want to make movies.
Yeah, kind of, because I like a lot of the things that you're describing for Miyamoto and getting game design. Like, is that not the original Doom in a lot of ways? And like, think about how that pushed forward an entire genre, and think about how it's still referenced today, and like you like pretty much associate first person shooters with the West, and you couldn't imagine a video game industry without them. And so it's just like it's different cultures contributing different things, and I think what it comes down to is like you're gonna like some things more than others. You might like platformers more than shooters, or you might be very attached to the anime aesthetic. You might just like that, just visually, and that you might prefer Japanese games that way. But does that inherently make them better, especially now? Like, I don't know. I don't think you can say that.
Yeah, I mean now it's harder, and now we have a whole generation of people growing up who played the excellent NES, Super Nintendo, just PC games. You know what I mean? Like we have a whole generation of people who grew up playing games, who like grew up wanting to make games.
Do you think maybe in some sense history is getting recontextualized by all the re-releases, where like everything is being re-released now, and everything is a lot more widely available, and so is the way those things are being re-released like maybe coloring how we view their importance in history?
I mean, for sure, right? And some things drop off, and you'll never play them again, and they just get erased. But here's the thing, Ben. Like, I think Mario 64, Super Mario 64, is easily better than Doom. I can make the case all day long. I could say that is a better game. You know what I mean? Doom's huge, I think, on a technical aspect.
Yeah.
I think Doom is a lot about the look. It's a lot about like, hey, like this looks amazing, as opposed to like, man, that was a really well-designed level. You know, like, man, that I just loved discovering this in this part, and they really just thought about how this would work in mechanically against this and this. You know what I mean? Like, Doom is, I think, like a technical marvel, and I think it's a huge part of its success. But also, like, its aesthetic is huge too.
But that's not what the question is, though. You're taking one specific game and comparing it to another specific game, and I'm not saying that you can't make those arguments. I think you can. I'm saying in total.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take the summation of all the games produced in Japan and all of the other Western games. And I'm like, I'm not sure that like just because you can make a case for Mario 64 being better than Doom, that means Japanese games are better than Western games.
I think it could. Just like I could, again, and this will be equally as offensive, I'll say U.S. movies made in the U.S. are better than movies made in Japan. And obviously there are tons of exceptions, hundreds of exceptions, but I can make that statement.
But how knowledgeable are you with Japanese film? Really? How knowledgeable are you on Japanese film?
I've seen fewer than 5 Japanese movies, right?
Okay, so
and I can
like,
make
come
that,
on.
I can make that statement because
No!
Yeah, because I think it's about like what is like most important to you, your culture, like what you grow up looking at and seeing and like wanting to do.
But you how many American movies have you seen? And you've grown up in America, like
That's what I'm talking about.
right.
And so, like, if video games were as huge as movies, if the Academy Awards was the Game Awards, right? Video games would be better in the U.S. Peter Jackson would have been like, man, I'd rather make a video game. I don't really want to do Lord of the Rings.
No, it's also time. Like, movies have been around for so much longer. Like, what you're describing in terms of prestige, you already see it shifting.
Yeah, for sure.
Video games are getting increased attention. So, like, what I'm saying is I think there are specific reasons for the problems that you're bringing up. Like, they have a cause. I don't know that it makes it, like, one greater than the other in that sense.
I'm with the thesis of, what was his name, Tom?
John.
I'm with John on this one.
Damiani, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little more. I don't think it's as cut and dry. I can see maybe that contributing to some of it, Kyle. But I feel like the thing is it depends on where you started with gaming. Like I think it has a lot to do with the generation you got into it. I mean, today it's a different story. Like things. I don't inherently think one is better than the other anymore. Like I think that's an absurd argument to make. Like Japanese games now are inherently better than Western developed games. Like they both have phenomenal entries. They both have shit entries. Like they've come to a point where like they're both at excellent places, and it's more diverse than just Western and Japanese. There's a lot more than that as well. But looking at the history real quick, it's that. There definitely was a place for Western games to thrive, and for most of I see the trajectory arc of it being like PC. PC had a lot of great Western games on it. A lot of the great genres we have now, like you said, FPS, like strategy, thrived on PC, thrived with Western developers supporting those, and
adventure games.
That's the one I was forgetting.
I think you can even say online games.
Yeah, like online, but online predates even like the 80s is when you started like seeing like Ultima and stuff like that. Like you obviously had those genres thriving and stuff. It's just I think it has partly to do with the consoles were made to be easier to get into, cheaper, whereas PCs were viewed as more complicated, harder to get into, more of like almost like a hobbyist type thing versus like a form of entertainment. And it wasn't until I think the 2000s where that discrepancy. It started to it went away. Things blurred together a little bit better. You had like the advent of Halo, a competent. I know people love GoldenEye, but like it really was Halo, like a competent console first-person shooter. Wait, what? And it feels like a PC shooter. It's like this is okay.
A shooter that wasn't good for a console, but was good as a shooter.
Yes, and it like exposed more people. Like basically, what I'm trying to argue is that like PC stuff started to get more mainstream and more integrated with consoles. And like more people got exposed to that through the 2000s to the mid 2000s specifically, to where we reached a point where the late 2000s like we can talk about all these things are almost at parity, and now you can truly see that they're like these games. That argument of like, oh, Japanese games are always better on consoles, Western or games are better on PC. That I don't think that argument is as valid anymore.
It's not.
It's gone. And that's just the historical angle of it. I know it's like getting to like an opinion here, but like I think that's how I've always viewed it. Is that's just like how history played out. And now thankfully we're at a point like you can look back on that and say that's how it was, but it's not. And I think older people who went through that arc, that's where they're getting their biases from. It's like, what were you introduced to? Where were you introduced along that timeline if you were a mid 2000s like introduced to gaming? And that it colors a lot of where your preferences come to, where you kind of like cherish things more. Oh, I grew up on like a Nintendo, or I grew up, it doesn't matter. You grew up on Genesis, a Nintendo, even a PlayStation. You were mostly a Japanese game, if it like appreciating those more. Whereas if like someone got you into PC gaming, you know, in the like the 90s, you were like Doom, Myst, like later when Blizzard came around with like the Warcraft games and StarCraft, it's like, oh wow, these are amazing. What is this? Who cares about Nintendo or Sega or any of these? They have nothing on this. And I think it's just those biases that existed. And I think nowadays that's largely gone away. And it's going to be easier going forward. I feel like what we're seeing now when people complain, oh, your Hall of Grades is too Nintendo filled, give it another generation. And I think that's going to go away. I think you're going to see like people like the next generation of people doing media coverage like us. They're going to be like, oh, it'll be a lot more balanced. I don't think you're going to have this problem as much as you do now. But like it's just the way history played out. And I think that's largely, it was out of the control of a lot of people, like and as you whether or not you decide to evolve and be mature about it and expand your taste as you were exposed to more things, it's that's just who you are.
Yeah, it's difficult because I think categorizations can be extremely detrimental. I think there's this, and especially like with how we communicate now, there's a strong desire for consensus as quickly as possible. And I think what happens when you do that is you undervalue exposure. And kind of what I was saying about the Japanese game thing, where like the more that I explored that, the more I learned and realized like, oh, like what is being said as the story is not actually what's happening, not to the degree that people are saying it. And like, I think that's what I'm trying to say is like, you might prefer Japanese games just because you play Japanese games more. And maybe on a surface level, there's something that just immediately draws you to them. But that doesn't mean if you were to make the effort to play more Western games that you wouldn't feel that way. And I just think that that's a good thing to advocate, to have the humility to say, like, I don't know, and to use that opportunity of not knowing to explore. That's all I'm saying. But at the same time, like, you need those strong opinions to understand things. Like, someone needs to get out there and say, this is better than this, so you can start that conversation. Yeah. Like, not everything is of an equal level, right? Like, not everything is just, like, all nice and dandy and it's all good. You can't do that either. And so, I get it. But, you know.
Like, John's going to play Doom and say, Final Fantasy VI is way, way better than this.
Sure.
You know, it's just like, oh, I was right. You know what I mean? Like, I think that... I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we can't say, like, he's never played Doom, he's never played Ultima, he's never played SimCity. You know what I mean? Right. We can't say he's never, like, gone and tried those games. Yeah, to me, it's, like, a legitimate opinion historically. I totally agree that you can't today say that, like, any country has an advantage, really, game design-wise, because we all make very bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it goes even beyond that because of how things of just global, like the globalization of just even gaming.
Right. Heck yeah.
Like, it's not even incredible. It's not even entirely appropriate to call a game strictly Japanese anymore.
There have been plenty of times where I've had to be like, where was this made?
Yeah.
Right. And that was not the case for...
Yeah, back in the day, that was clear cut. But now it's like, wait, so Square Enix was involved from Japan, but then Eidos was also involved in development. So, like... yeah, what do you call that? Or and then like, you know, like Bandai Namco having like studios all over the world contributing, or Ubisoft. So like, what do you? How do you label this? Like, you don't. You call it a Ubisoft game. It's like, there you go. Like, you stop calling it by its region. It's nice to give credit to like smaller developers who are from like, you know, like CD Projekt Red, you know, being from Poland, right?
CD Projekt Poland, yes.
Yes, thank you. I want to make sure I get that correct. I don't want to embarrass myself. But like, yeah, like giving shout outs to like different parts of the world where it's like, that's not traditionally known for being like a strong game development community. That's nice to do, but at the same time, larger companies, it's like, to call them Earth games, like it was developed on Earth. There you go. Like, it's absurd. I know I'm just being stupid, but yeah, like it's like genres. The whole argument about like genre stuff we don't need to get into, like how absurd and like irrelevant they're becoming because so many games use so many different elements. Like, what do you even call it? You're gonna put like 6 different genre terms in front of the game to describe it, or do you just like talk about it and like you understand it has those elements, but through a natural discussion with people versus putting labels on it as shorthand.
Right. I just think the broader your generalization, the less effective it is in a lot of instances.
Oh, sure. Heck yeah.
Yeah. But we are unfortunately out of time. I think that's the only email we're going to get through. It was a meaty one.
Yeah.
It was a meaty one. Damiani, I know you have to stream it a little bit, so that unfortunately is going to be a one email frame trap. Thank you so much to the spirited discussion, Kyle Bossman and Michael Damiani. If you want to send an email in, the email address is askeasyallies@gmail.com. One more time, that is askeasyallies@gmail.com. Please give us your hardest hitting questions. Let us get mad. It's good. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time.